Bob, are we streaming yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I drink any more of this coffee, I'll be streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Commercial about dragons, whatever. Blah blah blah.
Okay, I feel like
Oh,
we're
that
streaming.
guy's gonna die.
Here we go. 5, 4.
This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
I'm Super Green. Are you Super Green? This is Ruby Rob, broadcasting from House Misdirected, and with my main man, Phil V, who's going to hit us with the word of the day. Now just remember, be Super Green, Phil V.
Recycling.
And now we know the only way to get Phil to not be long-winded is to give him a script with one word and let him make a Fifth Element reference. This is the 360th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast, and tonight we're talking about recycling ideas and being green that way, not, Fifth Element. How's it going? My name's Chris.
And my name's Phil.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
I mean, I got to do my Ruby Rod.
Yeah, no.
Of course. It's pretty fun.
We're hopped up on coffee.
Hopped up on coffee.
Got a couple injuries on the bench.
There's injuries everywhere, but we're playing through them.
Mm-hmm.
Playing through the injuries.
Professionals.
Yeah, Lilu Dallas Multipass. There's
Multipass.
Ooh, so
Bob, are you designated as human?
Negative. I am a meat popsicle.
Please place your hands on the circles.
We may have seen this movie about 100 times.
Yeah,
Smoke you.
I mean, it's big bada boom.
Big bada boom.
There's another good one right there. The chat room's on it.
Alrighty. Well, since now that we've condensed most of the Fifth Element, Send of the Fifth Element is a sci-fi movie.
I feel like Send
from the
has seen
90s.
the Fifth Element.
Oh, I don't know.
I assume the Queen can confirm or deny that.
I'm waiting. Let's see.
We'll see in a second. Anyways, we're waiting for that. I suppose we should do one thing. So we're into one thing. Phil, tell me about your one thing.
Yeah, I'll do my one thing, and then we got to add something to the announcements. I'll ad-lib the announcements. So this weekend I was working on my adventure for Origins, Blue Europa, the Hydro Hackers adventure, and now it's 2 weeks away, so like I'm working on it right now is not like the most time management of my work, but like one of those things where like you put things off because your brain's chewing on it.
Yeah.
Right. So whatever it was, I just couldn't touch Blue Europa for a while, and I finally sat down this weekend and I just blasted through. I was like, well, now I know it needs to be done, and I wrote out these custom moves for the adventure, and in the middle of it, I was like, oh shit, son. I'm like, this is basically the hydro hack mechanics that I should be using for the full game. Because I've wanted to for a while.
Moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've wanted to for a while get away from the really board gamey one. I like it, and I think people like it, and I think it'll be a great board game when we someday make that. But I wanted something a little more narrative based. And like I feel like I got it. Like I feel like I landed the dart on the board. It'll need a little more refinement going around and some more playtesting.
Phil, Shia LaBeouf wants to say something to you.
Just do it.
There you go. Just do it.
Do it. Yes, thank you. So I did. I cranked through the adventure. It's nice. It's definitely a heist. It's a hydro hack, and I left it open enough so that the players have the freedom. If they're ingenious, they have the freedom to conduct this heist any way they want. There is definitely a path that will be difficult but will work, and then there is it's open for
all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm excited that Blue Europa is ready, and I'm running it once at Origins, but I'm running it twice at QCC. Yeah, because we have a lot of friends who come into town, and all of them have played all the other Hydro Hack adventures. So I wanted to make sure I had 2 tables of Blue Europa this time around.
Hack and water.
Yeah.
You got to keep the Hackamaniacs happy.
I mean, just stealing water, really. But hack and water.
Wow, this is like stealing the best water
ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
So, so that's me. Chris, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
So I played a bunch of Pandemic Season 2 over the last few days. So Bridget, one of my roommates, and Jen, my partner, and me. We've been playing through Pandemic Season 2, and while it's not quite as good as Pandemic Season 1, it's still a lot of fun. The board has a lot of expandability as far as putting stickers on the board, like as far as like putting more stickers of more locations on the board. So like the board opens up.
So is it a new board, or do you take your Season 1 board?
No,
and,
it's a new board.
Oh, okay.
But you start in like the Atlantic Ocean area
Okay.
and all the cities surrounding that from the Pandemic
Sure.
board, and then there are stickers that make the board bigger, like opening up more cities and whatnot.
Interesting.
And there's a lot more drawing and putting stickers on the board, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's cool. A lot of people like that about
Season 1.
No, about Risk Legacy.
Yeah.
Like Risk Legacy has a lot. Like you mangle the shit out of that board in
Yeah.
Risk Legacy.
We've ripped up a ton of cards already in Pandemic Season 2. There's a lot of options for stuff like that.
Mhm.
The game was frustrating for a couple of months, and it's very strange. I should just trust the designers, because every time I'm like, oh my god, this game's so stupid, it doesn't let us do X. Then the next thing that happens is it lets us do X more effectively. Like, oh, okay.
Okay, so maybe
Patience,
Maybe.
Grasshopper.
so maybe Rob knows a little bit more about.
I mean, it's just like it's almost like it's trying to. You know what it feels like to me?
It feels like it's trolling you and then answering. You?
Not only that, it feels like if you've ever played or heard of the games like Bloodborne or a Soul, what the heck's that name? The Nintendo hard games that came later.
Yeah. Soul Calibur?
Not Soul
No.
Calibur.
Oh, I fucking love Soul Calibur.
Soul Reaver. Soul. Somebody will say Dark Souls.
Souls.
Thank you. It's like Dark Souls, the board game.
Interesting.
Like
Not familiar with it.
you play it and you upgrade your stuff, and then you feel like you have a chance.
No, well,
Which is how those games work. Like you have to go back and play them over and over again
Yeah.
to get better and better and like grind and whatnot. This feels a little bit like that.
nope. And there's a Dark Souls board game too.
There is a
There
Dark
you
Souls
go.
board game. I've never played it. I don't really want to. I kind of want to play Dark Souls because it's kind of in that neighborhood of games I like to play. But anyways, there you go. Bob, what's your one thing?
Dental work sucks.
Yep.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
There we go.
I mean, you're gonna give the whole TED talk now about how
Yeah.
dental work sucks.
So
Is there a moral to this story?
like 3 weeks ago, yesterday, I had 2 fillings done on the back tooth back here. For those of you in Radio Land, Hans, this is radio. Put the gun away. Bottom right, all the way in the back. Had a couple of fillings done, and after like a week and a half, 2 weeks, it was still hurting and still very sensitive to cold, and I was having difficulty chewing on that side. And I said, all right, I should do something about this and talk to the dentist. And it took me a whole nother week before I finally called them and got an appointment, because I kept forgetting to call. And went in there today, and they were like, oh, it looks like we just got a high spot on the filling. So when you bite down, all the pressure's going in one point
Oof.
and focusing. So they ground that down, and now my tooth feels like it's a friggin' bowl. It's like this huge divot in it. And it's super sensitive because, of course, they were grinding on it today. So everything's like super sensitive today. And it's just annoying. But that's
like
dental work in a nutshell.
I feel like we need an X card on the table because there's a lot of talking about grinding.
Right? Where is the?
Where's
Not
the
that
X
kind of
card?
grinding.
Don't know
The
where it
tablecloth
went.
is kind of X-y.
You
could just point at one
We
of the
just
X's on
cross our arms over each other. Although if I do it, I might throw something out. By the way, for all you listeners out there, I threw my back out, so I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah, Chris is hurting.
I'm having a hard time walking.
Um,
Anyways,
Blake Ryan wants to know if you were in a prison gang with that shirt.
this is my work shirt.
Yeah, see, Buffalo State College, where both Chris and I work, their color is orange
And black.
and black. So
They are the Bengals.
yeah, so Chris does actually look like he's. On
Yeah,
a
I didn't
prison
feel
gang.
like changing my shirt before work because everything hurts, and I go really slow right now, and I have to go to work.
Yeah,
I mean,
going
why
really slow.
why change twice?
Yeah.
when you just change
Yeah.
once. Yep, I'm with you.
So
Besides
right.
that, orange is good for streaming.
supposedly,
I mean, you can see.
yeah, I mean, you can see me. I'm
Yeah.
bright.
Yeah.
I'm so bright. It's like the orange cover that Bob has on his microphone. Everybody can see that.
Yeah.
Coolness.
All right, let's go into the announcements then, hey?
So let's talk about a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
The deal. Somebody want to talk about it? I don't have the notes up.
Bob, can you get to the big board?
Let me get to the
Todd
big board.
Crapper's Kickstarter. It's a LARP and playing poker. So like it's a Reese's Cup scenario here. Two great things that taste great together.
Mm-hmm.
Bob's gonna get us to the big board in just a second. Come on, Bob, you're
Oh,
embarrassing.
come on.
Anyway, the Kickstarter's underway. It's a short Kickstarter, right? It's only 21 days. It's a
Something like
3-week.
that. That's what I heard. I know nothing about this except that it's a poker.
It's
It's
a-
a poker LARP. It's about making deals.
There we go. He got it.
All right, 13 days to go.
How are we doing?
38 backers, $454 out of the goal of 446. So he is funded.
Okay.
Yay!
Todd's funded. This thing's happening.
Yay.
This thing's happening, folks. It's going to come out. Todd's a super cool dude.
Yeah.
And the GM for my part-time GOTS game.
Mm.
So you should give this thing a look. It's the kind of thing that would be a fun kind of evening one shot, right? Play a little poker,
Mhm.
play out a little drama, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times.
Did you want to improvise something from the?
I did.
the
It's
announcements?
June, my friend.
It is.
Yeah, Pride.
There you go. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
happy Pride for all of you. And for those of you out, not out, for those of you who aren't sure, who are questioning, whatever, like happy Pride. So it's been a year because it was last Pride. Last year, this time is when I came out on the mics.
Mhm.
Yeah. In the after show, I think we'll talk a little bit about that. About a year later, what's different.
Sure. That sounds great.
Yeah, but anyway, happy Pride. We'll obviously, I think, do some more stuff or talk more about it over the month. But yeah, I'm excited. I have to bring my I need to bring my shirt.
And pins.
Yeah, but I have my Fate one.
Oh, cool.
I have the Overcome
With the
with the rainbow.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, Pride will overcome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Love it.
So sweet. Yeah. Okay, so there's that.
Let's talk about our secret guest for next week. Or
Next
Are
week.
we talking about our secret guest, or
Well, no. Next
We're
week.
vague casting the secret guest.
we should actually just should we
No.
just
We
announce
shouldn't.
it?
No.
Okay.
No. But I drop a hint, a pretty massive hint in Pandas that when it drops next Monday.
Oh, okay.
Just saying. Anyway, we have a secret guest on next week. And our topic next week is all about being a good conventioneer. I don't even think that's a word.
It is now. It's about
it
as much
is.
of a. It's about as much of a word as Musketeer is.
Survey says. Okay, it's about being a good convention goer.
I'll allow it.
There we go. Thanks. We're going to talk about being a good player at a convention, a good GM at a convention, a good human at a convention, and some convention survival tips because we're heading into the peak of convention
Yep.
season. And after that kerfluffle at UK
Kerfuffle.
at UK Expo, I feel like we might have to have some talks about what you can and can't do in your convention games.
To not vague cast that part, you should go search it on Twitter.
Yeah, I'd
And-
be surprised if you didn't already see it on
Yeah.
Twitter.
And if you haven't seen it, then this is a week later after the fact. It is about a gentleman who decided to run a Tales from the Loop game, and at the very beginning of the game had all the kids be kidnapped and raped.
In a Tales from the Loop game.
Yeah.
It's a game about kids.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not going to even... We'll cover it next
We're going
week.
to talk about it next week.
Yep.
So that's the preview for next week's show.
Next week I'm getting out.
We're gonna deconstruct that and how that's a terrible
I'm
idea.
going to tell you the 10 things that were done wrong in that moment.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ugh.
And then we'll talk about the 10 things you can do right.
Yes, we're going to talk about how to be good at conventions
Now you have the format for the show next week.
yes,
Yep.
and our secret
10 things not to do and 10 things to do.
and our secret guest will help us out with more advice.
Yep, because they are quite good at that stuff too.
Indeed.
They, I said. I don't know if that's actually a hint or not. Probably not. Maybe not.
Rolling on. Tell us about the QCC. Chris.
Cool. So this thing is coming. It's July 12th through the 14th. We have just so first off, you can go and register for events if you are a VIP right now. If you have the early registration stuff, you can get into games currently. If you're not, and you're listening to this, you can get it on Friday. If you're listening to this when the podcast came out, you could start registering for events last Friday.
Yes.
Because the podcast comes out a week after we record it.
Immediately.
Yes.
Yeah. So the other things. So Misha Bushyager has been announced as a guest.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Misha is a longtime gamer, designer. She's been working making sure the next generation of geeks see themselves represented. She's a panelist, writer, editor, proofreader, and sensitivity reader for tabletop, role-playing games, and LARPs. She's one of the founders of New Agenda Publishing and a curator for More Seats at the Table. She's worked on Arun. If you haven't heard about that, you should check it out. It's really cool. What's the description of that game? Would you say
Futurism, isn't it?
Afrofuturism?
I have not played
I'm
it.
pretty sure
Yeah, off
that's
the top of my head,
the
I can't
description
remember.
of that. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about that. Hashtag feminism, chill, save, Lovecraft-esque, dead scare, misspent youth sellout, with me, Masks Unbound, and a yet unpublished LARP, which will be running at at the QCC Nightingales.
Just for purposes of clarification, Orun is post-apotheosis Afrocentric space opera RPG.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Nice mix.
Kick ass.
All right. So you can come play Nightingales with Misha.
Yeah, and you should follow Misha on Twitter.
Yeah,
Misha
absolutely.
drops a lot of really good wisdom, like frequently.
So our convention is all about playing games. We make our guests available to the general convention, but it's a small show, and we want you to come game. That's why we don't have any panels this year. But all of our guests have been asked to make themselves available to just chat about whatever. So we want you to feel like you can just come up and ask anybody anything, talk to anybody, chat with anybody. Of course, be polite and reasonable about it.
Yeah, if you need a new bag, come find me. I will help you. I'll get you in. I'll get you in one.
We have a ton of RPG offerings, a bunch of D&D, and a bunch of indie games. I mean, we are RPG centric for the most part, but we do have an open board game library, courtesy of Jason Gow of Casual Dragon Games. It's a local shop around here. He's also part of the Indie Game Alliance, which is a big board game group of people that are similar to the Indie Game Developer Network. Like, they do a lot of the same things. They also always have a booth at Gen Con and Origins and bigger shows and whatnot. That's where a lot of indie board games get made. We also have a bunch of play-to-win games courtesy of Double Exposure and Evan Wing. So that's always nice to have. And we're working on getting some people to teach some of them. Mo Tusno is a guest this year too, and he's going to come and teach some games also.
I need to learn how to play Azul.
Yeah, Azul will be around to play. I believe Dina will be there too, also teaching games.
Nice. Good.
She's also on the guest list.
I'm running. I've got 3 games already registered. Like, I've got them in the system.
Yeah.
So there is two different sessions of Blue Europa. And then I am running on Sunday a game of Masks.
Which is neat, right?
Because I'm adapting my Dangerous Space Jail adventure.
For prom.
Yeah, it's prom night, and a mysterious alien fortress has appeared over the school. So, do with that as you please.
So yeah, that's the QCC. It's all coming together.
Yay.
Come together.
For some reason, if you want to come, we don't have a lot of tickets left for the VIP party on Thursday night.
Oh, where is it this year?
We're pretty sure it's at Pearl Street.
Oh, sweet.
That is, we're in negotiations with them right now. We're gonna try to pick somewhere else, but we're gonna try to get the same thing that we had last year.
Yeah, it was nice. That was a nice gig last year.
We've been talking to them, and then we're negotiating. We were trying to pick somewhere that was closer to Damon College, which is where the convention is, but there's not a lot of good spots that are cost effective near there.
Yeah, we may have to arrange some carpooling.
We may, and that's okay. We'll get that together in the next couple of weeks. You'll be seeing a lot more announcements about the games that are running and the guests that we have. There's a fairly long list. You can just go to qcc.com and check it out. Hey, also Monica from Bonus Experience, she's coming too.
I am so psyched.
Yay!
I'm so psyched. Monica's gonna be here.
All right, let's go on to our feature segment. Right? Nothing else.
Okay, hang on.
You ready?
Workshop! Keep using the same ideas. Don't waste them. Don't just keep using them. Pick them up, dust them off, shave off the file, the serial numbers. Workshop!
Don't suck.
Okay. I gotta admit, I don't think I really brought it on that one.
That's okay. We helped.
Kind of.
Sort of.
Yeah. Sort of.
Sort of helped.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I didn't feel like it was my best performance at Workshop. No, I don't want to redo it. I didn't feel like I don't know. I didn't have words this time around.
So last week, Blake Ryan Batman asked a question about recycling ideas as a form of mementos. While we did not believe that an idea could be a memento because it was not physical, or a thing really, we did like the topic of recycling ideas, so we decided to break it out into its own show. Phil, are there any definitions we need for tonight before we get into things?
Yeah, we got a few.
Okay, hit me.
Okay, first of all, let's just,
hit me with your best definition. That didn't really work.
Boy, wow. What's going on?
All right, then.
We listened to too much music and drank way too much coffee before the show started. Okay, so recycle, obviously, to use again, right? Just use the simplest definition of it, just to use again. Idea, we're going to use idea as an umbrella term tonight because there's so many things we can recycle. And we actually made a list later in the segment. There's so many things you can recycle that if we tried to say them in a sentence, it'll just be too frustrating. So when we say idea, you just plug in any one of those things from the list.
Sure.
All right. Trappings. Trappings are the outward signs, features, or objects associated with a particular situation, role, or thing. Okay. So in our case, it could be like setting terms, specific game terminology, like for instance, like the word Benny, right? Like that's a trapping to Savage Worlds. So when you are looking at recycling things, things often have trappings associated with them. Which brings us to our last term, filing off the serial numbers, right? This is a phrase that basically means to remove the trappings from an idea so that its origin is not recognizable.
Yeah, because Benny is really just some sort of point economy.
Exactly, right? And so
I just filed the serial numbers off.
Yeah.
Now, when I say point economy, that applies to a ton of different things.
Exactly. So we'll talk about why that's important a little later in the segment, but just keep that in mind.
So, what do we do next?
So now you just read the blue part.
Did you say what can we recycle? Did I miss that part?
No, I put them in italics so that we wouldn't say them anymore.
Oh, is that how we work?
Well, it does now. I needed it to organize the thoughts, but I don't need us to say it.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, so I put in italics.
Okay, so with those terms
I made the
set,
hand gesture with like diagonal hands, like it's in italics. See? So, like, just not bold, like italics. Not underlined.
I'm glad that we're talking about how the show notes work on the show instead of before the show. I didn't actually know that was what that meant.
Because we've never done it before, but you always say the thing at the top of the bullets of the list. So I was like, I don't know, if I put them in italics, maybe you won't say it. And I didn't color it, so I was hoping you wouldn't say it.
That's why I was waiting for you to say it. It was in black.
I know.
Well, with those terms set, let's break open the term idea and talk about what we can recycle. And when we talk about things that we can take from a game or a campaign, there's going to be a list. We talked about that earlier. It's not an exhaustive list, of course, because we never can cover everything. But here's some of the things that we think we can use to recycle. What is the first one, Phil?
So the first group is story elements, right? So we can recycle hooks, plots, arcs, tropes. Right? Yeah. What else?
Character elements. So descriptions, personalities. Those are some things. Give me a third one.
Stat blocks. So we can recycle monsters. We can recycle NPCs. Equipment.
Those are some of my favorite things to file the serial numbers.
Oh yeah. We'll talk about that because that's also a favorite.
Mechanics is another thing. It's the other my favorite thing as a game designer to file the serial numbers off and apply somewhere else. So mechanics and mechanisms and procedures.
Yeah.
Which are essentially
which combine together to make mechanics.
Yeah, those are all the things that combine together to make mechanics. Right?
Yeah, but sometimes you can take a mechanism, sometimes you will take a procedure, or sometimes you take both. And then campaign elements, right? Locations, organizations, history, items, culture. Or parts of a culture, like all of those are things that we can recycle.
I mean, just not for games, but for any kind of creative endeavor,
right?
So, with that list of things we can take, I'm laughing because Phil did the italics thing. Because in the show notes, there's some italic stuff that says "Why is recycling good?" Which I'm going to say it now because you put the hand gesture up for everyone in podcast land that's not seeing us be ridiculous. All right, with that list of things we could take, the question is, should we? The answer, of course, is we totally should.
Yeah, there's a few caveats around we totally should, which we're going to talk about through the show. But aside from those, yes, I agree.
It's a blah, blah, blah.
Misdirected mark.
Blah, blah, blah,
word
blah.
scramble.
I don't say blah, 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 blah.
No, that was not written in the show notes. It is a practice that occurs in games and writing that has been around for a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, look, TV tropes exists for a reason, right? Because these things get recycled one show, one movie, one idea after another.
And if you've learned nothing from listening to us for 7 years, it's that.
Go read TV tropes.
Not just TV tropes, but game stuff is recycled constantly.
Oh, constantly.
Especially design stuff.
Yep.
All the time.
Because there's not that many original ideas. That's just
that's actually the truth, right? There's not that many.
But you can be original in how you combine them and the trappings that you put on them.
Absolutely. I mean, so it's really interesting because I'll say this just really as quick as an aside, but
before we get to the which I'm
italics.
making the italic sign.
Yeah. So when a game has original mechanics. Because it's for one, it's kind of exciting, and then two, shortly after, everybody recycles it and starts coming up with things like you had never seen anything like Dominion until Dominion.
It's true.
A year later,
there were all kinds of deck builders.
50 different deck builders.
Deck builders are now a part of a lot of different kinds of games. In fact, Pandemic 2 is essentially a deck builder.
What? That's crazy. That's wild. That's interesting.
Yeah. It is
Good-
pretty
good catch.
wild. It is
Terrible
pretty-
save,
It is
Bob.
pretty interesting.
Good. Don't save it, but good correction.
It is a deck builder, and not like you don't build the deck while you're playing every individual game, but the
Right.
meta game is manipulating the deck.
Interesting. So yeah, so that's how you know that from time to time something completely original shows up, and it's just it because you're like no one's ever seen anything like it, but because we recycle and every designer recycles, right? Every GM recycles, every designer recycles. Eventually, we'll just see more of them like it until somebody comes out with the next thing.
Mhm.
Like I remember when Magic came out.
Yeah,
Right?
the collectible trading card game.
Like I lost my shit. I'd never seen anything like it
Yeah.
before.
Nothing that stuck to the collective consciousness anyway.
I played 2 games of Magic and my ass was at the store buying decks.
Yep.
Like I played 2 games that my friends had when I came home from college, and I was like, "Well, you guys better just drive me down to the store. I'm going to need a couple packs myself."
Yeah, and then you saw then to take that idea of the collectible trading card game and mash it with miniatures gaming, you got HeroClix.
Yeah.
Not that is filing some serial numbers off. and
Yeah, I
combining
mean,
them in
at
a
some
different
point
way.
you start. Yeah, like well, HeroClix first before HeroClix, it was Mage Knight.
Mage Knight.
Yeah, because as soon as I opened my first Mage Knight package, I was like, "Oh."
It's
It's like
magic
oh,
in figures form.
yes, exactly. I was like, "Oh, wait, I know what this means. Like I'll be out of this game in
Yeah.
a year."
Phil was all over Mage Knight and stuff, and was working on terrain, and I'm like, man, I'm totally not into that. They could never get me to play that game. And then they're like, oh, here's some superheroes. We'll call them HeroClix. And I went, fuck.
Yeah, absolutely.
People just use the general term clicks for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now,
I always called them, even when they weren't, I always called them HeroClix.
yeah, Mage Knight was the original. Mage Knight was the original because it was Mage Knight, Mech Warrior, then HeroClix, and then all the associated clicks after it.
That's right, because Mech Warrior had a version of that game.
Yeah, Mech Warrior was interesting. Anyway, okay, so there's some pitfalls to recycling, right? So we did say there were some caveats about recycling ideas, and the thing about recycling ideas is that you have to do a good job filing off the serial numbers, right? If you take an idea from one place, one game, whatever, and move it to another, you gotta strip off the trappings that are from the original game. Otherwise, when people see it, they're going to recognize where it's from. And depending on how divergent that is from where you placed it, you can break immersion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you will just be like, no matter how hard you're trying not to, like people will not be able to not see what you've done.
Yes.
Are we gonna do a little role play?
Sure, why not?
Yeah. Okay, ready?
So I'm running a Numenera game for
Yeah.
Bob and Phil, and they find a new artifact. It's this cylinder with a button on the outside and an open top with a crystal on the inside. And when you push a button, this beam of coherent light plasma comes out.
It's a lightsaber.
Does it cut through steel?
Can I block energy blast with it?
Damn, I've come too close to the thing. Now here's an interesting thing. So I tried to do the Blades of Malmora blades in our Scum and Villainy game.
Yeah.
But one of the players just kept calling it a lightsaber because they've never seen Voltron.
Right.
I'm like, it's not a
Wait,
lightsaber.
I'm not ripping that thing off. I'm ripping
I'm
the other
ripping
thing
the other thing off. So it's like, that's another, like, how to do you just rely on the trope sometimes or what?
So yeah, it's
Which I really didn't want the lightsaber
right.
because the blade can do some different things than the lightsaber.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The blade. Yeah. It's tricky, man. Right.
Yeah.
The lightsaber is a very tricky
Lords
thing.
of Light.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right.
Somebody
Thunder.
mentioned Thundar's.
Yeah. Also a lightsaber.
Yeah,
Right.
essentially.
Not lost on 7-year-old Phil.
The Sun Sword. The
Yeah,
Sun Sword's
man.
great.
I mean, it worked for Thundar largely because one, I was like 7 or 8 or something, and like, of course, I wanted everyone to have a lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, the problem is, right? The problem is with this is that, our poorly acted little drama portrays is that like you can't unsee these things, right? Like once you have broken immersion on it, like you're stuck with it. Like then, and it's bad because then players are like we're playing that new Numenera game, and then Bob's like, I pull out my lightsaber. I mean my artifact, right? And then everybody's like, fuck it, it's your lightsaber, right?
Yeah.
And then like everybody just gave up on it.
Yeah.
So
that happens, right?
it totally happens.
And so we'll talk a bit later about how you can fix that kind of stuff
Yep.
when it happens. But it really gets into the question of should you recycle everything and anything? And I think you should. Like, I think it's just yes. Breaking immersion doesn't bother me in some of those cases because a lot of these things that we kind of bring up can really let people ground themselves into the game or like give them something to attach themselves to.
Yeah,
because they understand it. They're not like trying to figure out what's going on.
right. And especially if people are willing to just play through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So give me some examples.
Well, all right. So I'm going to talk about places where, like, if you didn't care about breaking immersion, right? So back when I was in a young GM back in the 80s, I ran a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game where I lifted literally everything in any media I consumed wound up in my game. So like I had Space Marines from Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
I had an intergalactic Kumite because I saw Bloodsport.
Kumite.
Which is funny because later in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon life, they did that.
Did they?
Yeah. Intergalactic Kumite, essentially.
Are you shitting me?
I swear to God.
I mean, I didn't watch
In-
the cartoon because
in
it pissed
the-
me off when I was a kid.
Not that one. The one that came in like the early 2000s.
Oh yeah,
because they redo the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a lot.
yeah. I just
Like, there's a CGI one. There's a really good it was almost serialized anime feeling that came up in the early 2000s where Shredder had the Krangbot in his stomach.
Oh neat.
And Shredder was like Shredder had been around for a very, very long time. But like seasons like 3 and 4 of that show, there was intergalactic Kumite.
So I did the fucking intergalactic Kumite like right out.
They were watching you, Phil.
I like watched
Or Interplanar,
right.
sorry.
I like
Interplanar,
watched Bloodsport and then like went home and was like, well, gotta write an adventure, Kumite.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like, but my players were also in high school and didn't care. So like, for instance, like
Also,
Craig.
it's a giant trope for. I mean, if you've watched enough fighter anime from Shonen Jump, like there's like one in like if there isn't some sort of fighting tournament,
Right.
There's always a fight.
Let me give you a few more examples. So Craig, Lord of One Name,
yeah,
his bear character had a claw shield that could shoot its claws with ropes on the end, like Lionel's glove, right? Like, and I think he also had the Thundercat sword. Like
he could extend.
Like it could extend. Like
Did he have to say thunder?
No, he didn't. But it had like 3 different
Did
dice
he say
damage.
Craig the Lord of One Name.
Tenu the Ninja Bear.
Tenu the
Ninja
bear,
Bear.
Lord of Bears.
Yeah. So anyway, like shamelessly stole from that stuff, but my players didn't really care. Now, Bob, you also did this in your GM career.
I did a Palladium fantasy game, and it was terrible because I sucked as a GM at that time, and I shoehorned all kinds of stuff in
Is
there.
this as bad as he's saying it is?
What's that?
The game?
Yeah.
I mean, it was playable. Was it a good game? No,
it was not.
No, it was.
I scoured the internet and I found somebody had put together.
Oh, that's not what I'm talking about yet.
Oh,
so first of all, it had. So first of all, the first half of the campaign was on the planet.
Yeah.
The second half so while we were on the planet, our thief character basically got the Spider-Man black suit. Like that was the thing. He got like the Spider-Man liquid black suit.
Mm-hmm.
Then there were Spelljammers.
I totally ripped off Spelljammer.
There was like.
Can you really rip off Spelljammer? Like flying ship is a thing.
No man, a fucking GIF like
No,
crash
but
landed
there
on
was
the
there was a
plane.
GIF. There was a hippopotamus dude.
Never mind. My
Yep.
Spelljammer Spelljam game didn't. I mean,
Like a fucking GIF crashed on the plane. It was like, here's how you get off the
Well,
planet.
I was playing D&D, so Spelljammer's not
Mike's
really
character
rip-off.
was a Jedi.
Mike's character was
straight
a
up Jedi. Not on like nothing else about Star Wars. Just there were Jedi in the game. Like it was it. Now, granted, it was the 90s. We were young GMs, and I mean, it had stories. We played them. We kept playing. I mean, we played.
Yeah, you just didn't file any of the serial numbers off. Really
None.
well. Okay.
And we all knew it, and I don't think we really cared.
Yeah, I think that's okay, right? Like
It is.
It's essentially playing pretend when you're a kid.
Yeah, it was just like that game was out there. Like it was out there because there wasn't a thing that both the TMNT game and Bob's game, there wasn't a thing that either one of us wasn't willing to shove into that game.
Yeah.
It was anything.
That's what I was talking about. Scouring the internet for somebody put together. What were they called? OCCs.
Yes.
Somebody put an OCC together for Jedi, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm taking that.
Yeah. It was definitely a Gonzo level game though. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So if you do care about breaking immersion, then you have to either be. What's the first one?
You either got to be more selective, right? Like you gotta pick and choose what you recycle. Like for instance, don't do lightsabers.
Yeah, don't do lightsabers.
It's hard. You cannot shave off the serial numbers enough to disguise a lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
So so you might have to pick and choose a little more.
Yeah. Or be better at creating new trappings for what you recycle. Are we going to talk about that later?
We can, because
Or
we have
should
a
we talk about it now.
No, we have a tips thing where we're going to
All
talk
right.
about general tips. So if you have tips for recycling, that'll come after the
All right.
break. In fact, we are coming up on the break right now. We're going to take a break, check in with the chat room, and when we come back, we're going to give tips about recycling as GMs, players, and game designers.
Yes.
Because you can recycle as a player.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Hey, so there are these two hosts on Misdirected Mark. They're Monica and Ray, and they have this editor. Who's the editor again?
Margaret.
And they do this show called The Bonus Experience.
Mhm.
I mean, I hear they have this really great tagline, but I can't remember what it is.
Well, they're two queer women
Yes.
speaking about games
Speaking
with
with authority.
with
yes.
authority. Die mad about.
Ah, the die mad about it part.
Yes.
Because there was a really great shirt of
Yes, did you see
Tessa
the
Thompson.
yeah, Valkyrie?
Die
Yeah,
mad
die
about
mad
it.
about it.
That show is amazing. They belong right there with Tessa Thompson. Like they fill that same role, especially for us. Just go listen to them and die mad about it if you don't like what they say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But they give amazingly excellent advice.
And happy Pride to them because they're two queer women.
Happy Pride.
Yay.
Anything in the chat room?
Yeah. A couple of people already mentioned that with the lightsaber thing, you're better off
Just saying it's a lightsaber.
Hey, no, but to give you a better idea of what this thing is, it looks kind of like a lightsaber. So it use that as the guide to point them towards what it is, rather than having them come to the conclusion themselves and then you can't get out. Like you can just kind of lean into it.
You totally can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ange said, be careful about misdirected Mark, word scramble.
That's the second time.
All right.
this
It's going to be a
episode.
good night, Tater. All right. Be careful about not being too repetitive. GMs need to be mindful of how often they're recycling things into their games because players will start to notice.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like if you are dragging the same NPC essentially from game to game and you have not figured out a way to make it into a cool shtick. Like there's a way to make it into a cool shtick, but if you have not done that, like your player is going to be like, "Oh, there's that NPC again." Like, check. Yeah.
It's not really hard to drift those either.
It's not.
You just got to make one adjustment or change one thing about it. And then it becomes something different.
Right. I mean, if you want to make a shtick from it, right? Like every world in the multiverse has its Old Man Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then like it's part of the game. Like at some point you encounter Old Man Jenkins and you're
Yes.
like, yeah, like
Because it's Old Man Jenkins. Right?
yeah. Because you can do that in a way that makes it fun. Right. Like
I mean, for whatever level of fun you have. I mean, some people like that stuff, right? When you have multiple campaign worlds and whatnot, but there's this one thing that is consistent across all of them.
yes.
Like that ends up being really fun. It's clever,
Yeah.
right? It's also a latch point. Like, oh, it's all on the, so it does another thing. Like, look at this connected universe that I have.
Yeah. So it
Or a
starts it starts
multiverse.
to build like a metaverse.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's I'm trying to think. I once did a witchcraft game that was based on reincarnation,
Mhm.
and that essentially the characters kept coming back
Mhm.
generation after generation to fight the same thing, and they kept losing. So it was this thing where like these familiar things kept like
Happening.
repeating cycle after cycle.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, it was good.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Then again, I just
I
watched
enjoyed
all
it.
of Russian Doll, so
Well, and I had these dreams that I would give the players, like about like different cycles that they had failed. Each one had like a different amount of information.
oh, that's
So,
that's
like,
cool.
As they got closer to having to face the cycle themselves, like they were able to start remembering bits and pieces. Anyway, a little off topic.
Yeah. All right. Back
Anything
to
else?
this thing.
Good.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right.
I saw some things about some other things people had recycled. Mo had the Power Rangers teamed up with a Starfleet commander in a Vietnam vet fighting mecha in space.
Okay.
Like
I'm
rock
into it.
on, right?
Totally
like,
into that.
like, that's
Lean into it.
Once you start talking about mashing things up, I'm pretty much on board. Like, I love mashups.
I mean, one of my favorite places to allow mashups to go wild was in Amber. There was this thing called a reality storm.
Uh-huh.
So it's like a hurricane that goes through realities and picks things up with it. So it was like a trope in my game, like a reality storm would always appear at some point, and you just get like all sorts of weird shit. Because I would just name whatever. Like there's a Starfleet ship in the middle of like, with a dragon flying by it because they just got sucked up in different realities. It was fun.
It's really easy to do that with the strange.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And you can almost, because any if you really let things go a little bit too far, like any cipher
Yes.
can be from any other fictional world.
Yep.
So I mean, you want to drop the Enterprise in the middle of Camelot,
You can.
you can with some flying dragons or whatnot.
Rob Day's got a good one. I filed the serial numbers off of Serenity and her whole crew as a riverboat in a Pathfinder game.
That's pretty
That's good
fun.
stuff.
Nailed it. Like that is good. That's good drifting.
People are mentioning some games that are quality for this, like Dream Park. I've never played Dream Park or read
Dream
it.
Park's it's an old game.
I've never even heard
Rifts
of
is
that one.
another
Oh,
one.
I only remember Dream Park from the ads in Dragon magazine.
Rifts is another one. I mean,
Well,
we could talk about
Riffs is bonkers.
yeah, Rifts is way out there. I mean, there is some.
Riffs is bonkers.
We could talk about the mechanics if we want to. We
Oh.
don't have to.
You know what?
But
We
there's
need
Savage
somebody
Worlds, so
we need somebody to come run Palladium Riffs for us.
why?
'Cause
Can we
you-
not? Can we just say we did and never do it?
Remember that time that we played Rifts? Well, that was
I remember
wild.
that
Wow,
time.
that was
I
wild.
remember that
Wow,
time.
okay.
It was really bad, and we're never going to talk about it again.
So you're using the time stone, is what you're saying?
Yes, I'm using the time
Okay.
stone. That doesn't exist
That's
anymore
fine.
in our reality because it got destroyed by Thanos.
Okay.
All right,
On our way
back to the thing.
back to
Yes,
the front.
recycling.
Mhm.
We're back, so we're going to talk about tips.
Yeah.
And let's talk about what tips do we have for GMs and players when it comes
Mhm.
to recycling ideas.
Mhm.
So I think so my biggest one is just like anytime you want to recycle an idea, pick one thing about the idea and change it.
Okay.
And that could be either then the other added on thing to that is pick one thing or add one thing to the idea. So you can either change one thing about the idea or add one thing about the idea,
Mhm.
and that will give it new life and make it something different.
Interesting. Yeah. A thing you're familiar with and a thing you're not.
And you don't have to do both of them. You can do both of them, but you can just do one of them, and
Yeah.
that works just as well. I mean, creating things from whole cloth is basically about. That's one of the ways you can do it. Before I go into another one, do you have any?
Yeah, I would
We'll talk about some examples. In a bit.
so I would say like one of the things when I want to do a really good clean recycle,
Mhm.
not a fast one. I want to do a really clean one. What I like to do is I like to think about really what is this idea, object, or whatever. Like, what's the essence of it,
Mhm.
and then find the game equivalent of it. So, like for instance, if I needed to drift a lightsaber, right? What we're really talking about is we're talking about a melee weapon
that can cut through pretty much anything.
that can cut through pretty much anything, right? So then, like, I would then, like, in whatever game I'm playing, I would start to think, like, okay, like, let's say we're just playing straight up D&D, right? Like, I'm more apt to make that thing more like a Vorpal weapon,
Mhm.
right? Because
You can
it's
cut through anything.
right. It's a melee weapon that can cut through anything. So, and like that's the thing I do when I want to do like a really deep dive, is because when you're recycling things, often what the thing you want to do is you're trying to bring some essence, like whatever that cool essence was, into the game. And so if I can find the game materials that I can build that out of,
Uh-huh.
then I'm just building the same conceptual thing. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. So
Okay.
I'm playing a Forged in the Dark game, so it's a little bit trickier because I have these weapons, right? And
Yep.
they don't always like they're all fictional based for the most part.
Yeah.
A lot of them are, right? So I have these blades, right? I'm just gonna keep on this. You said lightsaber. I'm using essentially the
Yeah,
same thing.
use the blades of Memory.
Blades of Memory.
Yeah, they're really good.
So the way is the thing in Scum and Villainy.
Mm-hmm.
Is the mystical power like the Force or whatever? Or
You mean the Force?
Quintessence.
Mhm.
It functions in sort of a similar
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Not exactly. These blades, they're red and black. They're black with red energy flowing through them. At least from this particular group that uses them. The only way that you can make them transform is by pushing way energy through them.
Sure.
So it's a bit of a drift. Like the user is the power source. So no one else can
Yeah.
just pick them up and use them.
What I think didn't come across when you first described them is it's not an energy blade.
It's not. It's just a
The
sword.
blade itself, the physical blade, elongates.
Yes, it transforms.
And if that had been more clear when you first brought them out, I don't think the lightsaber comparison would have.
it doesn't help when somebody's like they're a lightsaber. I'm like they're not a lightsaber. They're
Yeah.
a sword.
Yeah. So I without a doubt.
But that also creates some interesting play around it because it doesn't matter if you disarm them; they just turn back into a dagger then.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to funnel your energy through them. But they're very sharp. They can cut through anything for the most part.
Mhm.
In fact, to the point where somebody cut through a. Oh no, that was just Drew using a sword, cut through a.
Yeah, he
giant
just uses his regular sword.
His monofilament blade,
Yeah.
cut through a power converter.
Regular sword, quote unquote, monofilament.
Bob, I mean, you what you call it? You make many characters. You
Yeah.
must recycle some stuff. For characters.
I honestly don't recall myself doing it on purpose, but I've known other players who have essentially recycled old characters from previous games.
Mhm.
And really, what you don't want to do is take your barbarian from D&D and be like, here's my barbarian in, a Starfinder campaign.
Mhm.
But if you take the core essence, like you had already mentioned, take find the real secret to what makes that character, and bring them up, and then wrap them in the veneer of the current setting. You can evoke that feeling in your own mind for, like, I want to play this kind of character again. And you're not, if you're playing with the same people that you play with all the time, they're not going, oh God, it's core again. Most of us probably will, but
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think if I've ever recycled. I've recycled parts of PCs before, like either occupations or motivations, things like that. Like especially if I played in a game where it didn't get played through.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted to play like a, I don't know, scientist on the verge of a great discovery or something, and like whatever, that campaign didn't make it.
Yeah.
Like I may just bring that concept back
Mm-hmm.
in something different, right? Like maybe I want to build the ultimate jump drive, right? Or the gateless jump drive.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Because now I want to, but
it gives your scientist a goal and then a way to go play the concept still.
Yeah. Hey, I want to swing back because you had mentioned it at the top of the show, and I want to make sure that we put space in it in this section, which is recycling stat blocks.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. So let's do it.
I also want to talk about story elements also because you have arcs and plots and hooks, and that's a good place to talk about plot.
All right. Well, let's do stat blocks first, because I also have a thing I want to add to that, and then let's come back and do story elements.
Let's talk about the stat block. So, I mean, the great reskinning of anything is take a stat block for a game and just put whatever you want on top of it.
Man, I have run games with like 2 or 3 stat blocks total.
Yep. I mean, for 4th edition D&D, I had stat blocks for the types of monsters.
Right.
For regular, minion, and elite. And then I would
just coded, just painted over.
And all you have to do is just stick a ability or two that make them unique, and then you're good to go.
Yeah,
because that's the thing about numbers, man. Mechanics, you can just coat them.
Yeah. I mean,
they're a frame to paint.
I mean, like for instance, especially like if you are running like a Savage Worlds game, like you don't really need a lot to like stat wise.
Same thing. It's just about concept. Like, what are the 1 or 2 abilities or whatnot? I mean, Savage Worlds can actually be a little tricky if you want to use the mechanics the way that they're intended.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to really dig in there.
Yeah, because then like there's plenty of edges and whatnot that you can apply. Because the monsters get the
yeah, but you can apply those. You can just. I mean, I just apply those edges in my mind.
Yeah, but knowing them helps.
Yes.
Yeah, because they all do specific things to the mechanics of the game, and that's the thing about Savage Worlds. It's a much deeper game than people give it credit for.
Yeah, to a point, and then when you've hit the bottom of the depth, then the game gets really samey.
Because there's a certain path to.
Well, there's a finite space in that game. Like there's a finite amount of play in that game, and when you have played it long enough, far enough, like you have hit it all.
Mm-hmm. But I've never played any characters that are legendary.
No, I get it.
I mean, there's some edges that I just have never had access to. So,
I did an article a long time ago in Gnome Stew called Wireframes and Skins.
Yep.
And I did it for Corporation because I needed to make NPCs on the fly in Corporation. So what I did was I made I made a table.
You did the same thing I did for 4th edition.
Yeah, I made a table of stats. Like, and some of them were like easy, medium, hard. And then when I needed something, I just was like, well, I need this stat line. And what I reduced it to was like, I basically did what later Fate Accelerated would do, was instead of making a full character, because characters had like Corporation was, so I love Corporation, but it's got some things, right? So Corporation has like 20 skills. 8 of them are weapon skills.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like pistol, submachine gun, rifle.
Well, that just means that game's about a certain thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So there's like a lot of gun masturbation, right? So I didn't want to make my NPCs like that because I was like, fuck this. Like that is way too much work. So I essentially reduced my NPCs to 2 skills: important and not important based on whatever their job was. Like if you're a security guard, then I rolled with the important skill if you had to like look for somebody sneaking around or shoot somebody. And then I rolled for the unimportant skill if you were like talking or trying to like negotiate. And I reduced everything in that game to like basically 2 stats.
Made it easy to run, I bet.
Super easy to run.
Weird how a bunch of game design did that later.
Yes, like years later, like Fate Accelerated does that, right? Like security guard +4.
Yep, and then whatever you're bad at -2, then everything else is at 0.
Yeah, yeah.
It has
like
3, but nobody ever thinks about the third because you never write down the third one.
right. But I did I did that in Corporation, and I posted a whole thing. Like it's on Gnome Stew. You can see like the whole breakdown of how I came up with it. But it saved me so much time in prep because I wasn't prepping full NPCs for every game. Oh, and I had reduced all the weapons. Like I went through and cataloged all the weapons, and I was like, light weapons essentially do 2d6. Heavy weapons do this. Really heavy weapons do that.
Well, that's the new Monera.
Yeah, and I'd be like, oh, this guy, he's got a submachine gun. That's a 3d6. Like, I rolled through my prep like it was nobody's business. It was great. Oh, I totally forgot about that. But it was all recycling because those stat blocks never changed. All that ever changed was I would just describe a different corporation, or it's a robot, or it's a mutant, like whatever it was. And nobody cared. Like that was because that's the thing. Nobody's looking at those notes. Nobody sees that I've only got 2 stats. All they see is me roll dice and go, miss, hit. Oh, you kill it. Yeah. Right?
Is it dead yet? No. Did it hit me?
It's the great, what I think, fallacy about role-playing games is they're like anybody who's looking for like balance and things like that, as far as like when the game is being run, it doesn't really exist.
No, I mean the GM can always put their hand on the scale.
Yeah, wherever the power imbalance is in the game, because it's not all the games are built the same anymore, right?
Right.
But the GM always has the ultimate whatever, so just why not make it as simple as it can?
But then you get into the argument that some people who like to be super pedantic about it's the rules as written say if the GM's going to put his finger on the scales, then he's not playing the game. Let's like the fudging of the dice, the sanctity of the dice.
If somebody wrote the game that way, with that inside the rule book, then that game better be balanced really well. But even then, like, what were they thinking? Like, what was their design goal?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, there's not really any kind of real thing called balance.
I will say this, that the vast majority of role players, now I'm not talking about
between GM and players.
I'm not talking about the bean counters and the, like the people who need like total equality at the table. But the vast majority of players, if you are describing something interesting and the dice you're rolling is creating interesting events, nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Nobody's like, how many stats does this thing have? Well, how many, like, all people want to have is a good time.
Yeah. The only time that I think you really get into the other kind of play that I'm talking about is when you're playing in a game where there's a lot of random charts and whatnot, and you could run into something that will just murder you.
Yeah, or adversarial GM.
Sure, but
because, well, I mean, look, we talk about the adversarial GM being an awful thing, but like when I was younger, like I would never have stood for the shitty GMs who used to run for me to have like made up their own stats because I couldn't trust them. Right, I had to trust the rules to be the fairness of the game. And even then, it's like you said, like there's no stopping them, right? Because I totally got killed even under those systems.
Well, especially if there's no rules for how things are built.
Right, but I think that if so one thing I guess just to kind of drift this a little, I think games can be totally asymmetrical, right? So I think games can be very, very detailed for players and very, very streamlined for GMs if they're built in the same framework. Like, I think that is perfectly fine. And in fact, as a GM, I prefer it because if players want to kit out and stat out their characters and do all this stuff and come up with all these numbers or whatever, and they're enjoying it, awesome. I don't want to prep it.
Yeah,
I don't want a computer program to help me prep my stat blocks.
I agree.
Right? I want like 4 stats. And I want to tell cool stories and roll dice.
Yeah, and I want the game to help me do that.
Yeah,
and also if it is like if the point of the game is like that roguelike thing, then I want the game to be the thing that helps me judge that.
Yeah, and then I think you're like now getting more into Descent.
Sure, but there are also hex crawl games that work that way.
Yeah,
Torchbearer is a lot like that too.
Yeah, you're right.
There are games that do that, but then you can't be adversarial. You have to be a judge.
Yes, exactly. Like you need to become the neutral arbitrator of the rules and just let the rules drive the game.
But those games are like designing adventures for those things is hard.
Yeah. See, Blake Ryan's talking about it. Played Pathfinder. They had to use Hero Lab.
Yep.
Like Hero Lab. Hero Lab's both a godsend and made me cry. Like I loved Hero Lab because Hero Lab does make characters like wicked fast, but then you're playing a game that needs Hero Lab to run it. Like it's too much. It's at least too much for me. It's like why I can't play Pathfinder. I mean, if it's like, hey, I want you to make this character, and then I turn my laptop towards you, and I'm like, here, it's just going to take you about an hour or so on this program.
Well, I don't mind. So, like, usually with character generation,
it's fine.
We can talk about this. Let's talk about this. With character generation, I mean, if we're going to take forever to make characters, those characters hopefully will be interesting and will last a period of time.
Oh, last?
But they don't.
I'm sorry, you're making a first level wizard.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it doesn't take forever to make that character then.
Now, you know what'd be interesting is if somebody designed a role playing game where, so I think to some extent DCC does this a little, where the low level characters are simple, and then it's like at a certain level you get more details. Like, oh, you've made it to level 3, you now have skills.
Well, that's a game that understands that these characters are more likely to die at lower level.
Yeah, and I think DCC does that to some extent. Yeah, DCC does that to some extent because 0 level characters don't have classes.
Yeah.
So they have to like survive the funnel.
And I would assume that higher level characters won't have more resources. Have just more resources at their disposal.
So that's the thing about DCC. There's a reasonable number of ways to live in that game because there are a couple of rules. Like if you fall in battle, and even if you die, there's a rule where afterwards, if you can get back to the room and flip the person over, like there's a percentage roll
that they're not dead,
that they may not be dead. You just thought they were dead. Like, yeah. So at higher levels, it is a little easier to live.
I mean, that's probably on purpose too, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's fun, right? Because also, I would never we did when we played DCC and we played like about 3 levels of DCC. The funnel was fun, but I was just as happy when the funnel was over because I actually think the rest of the rules of DCC are like way cooler. Like you just don't get to play them in the funnle. Like in the funnel, you're just like
spellcasting's a lot more fun.
Spellcasting's bonkers, man. It's
people love the funnel, but there's a lot more game there.
The funnel's great for one shots.
Yeah, there's a lot of game there for campaign play.
Yeah, there is. That I will say that game is. We have said it before. That game is way more than people give it credit for.
Yep.
It's maybe one of my favorite versions of D20.
Yeah. So what I was getting at was like if you're, I think I will say that I think that your game is flawed if your character creation is complex and it doesn't give you anything fun to give you anything interesting to work with during the character creation. Now that is going to vary from person to person. So like, I've talked to tons of people who love making characters in GURPS. It's not for me.
Sure, that's the thing people like.
It's not for me, but there's a lot of people that have. I mean, one of our hosts, Jesse Edmonds, Palindrome from the Lounge, he's had tons of fun playing GURPS and making characters in GURPS. I mean, it's not my cup of tea.
No, and I mean sometimes character creation in a game can be enough fun that it's like it's actually enough in and of itself. Like I know people who like Traveler character creation.
Yeah, because the life path system.
Yeah,
because that is telling a story of a character as you're building the character.
And if you're playing old school, like
you could die.
You could die.
And like some people enjoy that putting together of a character.
Yeah.
Like it's the people that made pathed out their characters levels 1 through 20 for 3.5 or Pathfinder. Like people like that stuff. I mean, I'm not going to disparage anybody for enjoying that.
I think the problem is when you path out a character like that for Pathfinder or D&D.
Yeah.
Because if they don't live,
like
you did a lot of work, and then it's like, you're dead.
So if I'm going to take all that time, there better be some survivability to me. Like if I could just get offhandedly killed by a bad die roll.
Yes.
Then
yes, you can.
Yeah, and then I think there's a flaw.
Yeah.
Because the effort that you put into making said character does not equate to the survivability of character in play.
I agree.
Now, to me, that's a design flaw. I don't see how that's not a design flaw.
Yeah, like for instance,
I would love to hear some counter arguments from our listeners as to why that is not a design flaw.
Right, like for instance, the character generation in Fate is not short. If you do the whole thing with if you do the actual whole thing in the book with the crossovers and stuff.
Yeah, but those characters are hyper competent.
And your character will likely survive for
a long time.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, go back and tell me about recycling plot ideas
Yeah.
because that shit is real.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very real. So there's the idea is that there's only so many kinds of stories that you can tell, and there are only so many kinds of stories that you can
Is
tell.
it 22, 21?
It might be. So according to Plato, there's a lot more variances.
In Plato,
There's
yes.
like 500. There's like over 500.
What's his face from?
There's 21 different plots that you can
21
tell.
different.
It's not exactly true, and role playing games don't work the same way, right? But there are a certain number of frameworks that you can utilize, and those frameworks have sub kinds of stories that you can tell in them. So like we like to talk about mysteries, right?
Yep.
So a mystery is there's the trail, there's the ocean of clues. They're slightly different. There's the parlor room murder, which is not a trail. The parlor room murder is it's the Agatha Christie thing where you collect a bunch of clues, and if you ever paid attention to how Agatha Christie actually wrote those things, she didn't know who the killer was until the very end.
Right. By the way, it's 36 dramatic situations.
36 dramatic situations.
Yes.
Which was back to the basis of the first book I ever wrote in.
Yeah, right?
Jesus, Phil.
So the idea is that you look for these, to me, you look for grander frameworks for like particular little stories.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, is it a heist? Is it a heist? Is it a dungeon crawl? Is it an exploration?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a dramatic situation? Like a bunch of characters that have things that they want or desire, and other characters that have things that they want or desire, and those things are in conflict. Like those are kind of the story elements that we're looking for, and then you can attach different overlays to that stuff, which is where you get your hooks and your plots from. So, and those things can tell whole arcs. They can tell short stories, like one single adventures, or they can tell whole arc stories. And then, of course, you can combine those arcs into campaigns. And when you start shuffling those things together, you have a wide variety of stories that you can tell.
So, have you recycled? Plots from one game into another?
Plots. Define.
Yeah, I mean, if
plot
you like essentially like if you the whole idea for a session.
Have I recycled situations?
Yeah.
That's probably the better thing to say, right?
Yeah, that's a good term.
Sure. I mean, I've recycled certain kinds of situations, like the rescue a person situation.
Sure.
Like that is a completely recyclable thing.
Yep.
And you can just, depending on how you trap it.
Yeah.
Apply trappings to it. You complete different stories.
Yep.
And how you framework it too.
Yeah.
Like because it could be rescue a person as the situation, but the thing could be a mystery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to follow a trail of clues to find the person to rescue them.
It's aliens, right?
It could be the dungeon crawl. I think aliens is where they go into a dungeon to save a person, right?
Yes, it's also a mystery, right? Because there are no colonists. Like the first part is mystery. The second part
that's a meta mystery, right?
Yeah.
Like why are there no colonists as we're trying to find this person? But then there's the what's a somebody goes missing, you're trying to track them down. That's a kind of mystery. The missing person thing.
Oh well, that's like
quote unquote rescue the princess.
Yeah, I was trying to stay away from that.
Yeah, well, it's
princess will rescue herself.
I mean, rescue the princess. Yeah, the princess rescues herself. But the rescue a person thing, it could be a wide variety of things. It could be a heist. You could break into somewhere without trying to fight somebody to steal that person back. You could go and explore a place to go find the person that's gone missing.
Mm-hmm.
You could, like I said, the mystery of following the clues. There's a whole bunch of different frameworks you can apply to that situation.
Yeah, I mean, like look at Leverage.
Leverage is perfect.
Leverage is like essentially the same. It's essentially the same structure
every time,
retrapped like over and over and over, and it works. Like it doesn't lose anything. Like who's the bad guy? What terrible thing has he done? What's the thing he has of value? And let's go steal it.
Yep.
Like that's.
Then you just find out. Like
you just watched Leverage.
Yep, you just watched Leverage, and there's 5 seasons of that.
Yeah, and it's good.
It's very good.
And it's tropey, but some level you buy into that trope.
They do the thing that I was talking about earlier. You pick one thing and you change it.
Yeah.
Or you pick one thing and you add to it.
Yeah, and then you also mix it with character arcs and things like that.
Because there's a whole bunch of drama inside of that as secondary stories. But the overarching framework is always a heist.
Right. Like, for instance, I was stuck. Like, I wanted to play, I wanted to run Masks at QCC, and I was getting ready to write up the thing for it. And I was like, I don't have a fucking clue what I'm going to run. And I was like, I can't recycle any of the stuff I've run for Bob's group because that stuff's like super tailored to those characters. Like, it's not going to translate. And I was like, well, what could I do? What could I do? And then I don't even know where it popped into my head, but I was like, I could recycle Dangerous Space Jail, right? Like not the whole adventure, because the whole adventure is really like a point crawl that, point to point to point. That
It's a line crawl.
Yeah, it's a line crawl, right? Because it's really linear. But like that wouldn't work for masks. But having a mysterious floating fortress appear above Halcyon City
With a bunch of supervillains in it.
like with supervillains or space alien
or whatever.
villains or whatever, right? Like having something like that appear at prom night, and there's a reason why did it appear, what's inside of it, how do we make it go away? Like I'm like, well,
That's a game.
that's it, man. Like that's a
story.
4-hour session, right?
Yep.
Like and it was that easy. Like I'm gonna recycle my own shit.
Mhm.
And in this case, I wasn't even trying to hide it, right? Because I'm going to change enough, because I know I'm going to change enough about the adventure that if you had played Dangerous Space Jail, it really won't help.
Mhm.
Because there'll be a different bad guy, and there's going to be like, different things, whatever. But that concept was enough to recycle.
It's true.
And then I was like, oh, kick ass. Never mind. This is fun. You've
So yeah, go ahead. Hit me.
you've recycled I know you've recycled sections of the Airy Peaks because different groups of players have played through similar places in the Airy Peaks.
Let's talk about how that works. So I have a bunch of different adventure hooks or
Mhm.
situations, like go find this gem, go learn this information, whatever it is, and then I will tie it to the characters, and then I will put it often in different caverns.
Right, but like I'm not the only group that's ever been in Many Eyes
Correct.
what's called layer.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
And people were there to get a thing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So it's get a thing from a place.
Yeah.
I mean that is the.
But
the
you
thing.
recycle the places. Like
And I recycle the places.
right. Because the places are like what I think is really fun is because you recycle them, multiple people have been in the Mushroom Cavern.
Well, that's like the module story from the modules from old D&D.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of different people played them, and they all have different stories about
Yep.
what happened. It's kind of the same thing.
Well,
Now,
kind of, but you have different stories.
I do have different,
Right?
slightly different stories. Yes.
Yeah, because why I went into the Mushroom Caverns is not the same reason why
Nope.
another group did.
Nope. I usually have a. So that's just about elements.
Mhm.
I have a cavern. It's a location that's got a certain set of trappings to it, and things inside of it. I have some sort of situation that is occurring.
Yep.
To,
Layered on top.
Layered on top, and then I have characters that bring their own stuff to what's going on.
Yep.
And when you do that, you have a very different story. every
Very,
time.
very different.
And that is how you recycle those things.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not hard to do. I wanted to talk about arcs because you can.
Yeah, do it.
Recycling arcs is actually kind of tricky
Yep.
because arcs play out in different ways. Now, it's not so hard because you just have a meta arc, right? Like the bad guy is searching for artifact X to do thing. Like that is an arc that can be recycled
Mhm.
because it could be an individual story, but really, like usually that goes beyond. Like I'm going to reference Indiana Jones movies. Like they kind of follow the same arc because I don't think of the movies as being like one shots. Like
Yeah.
they could almost be campaign arcs in and of themselves. The number of scenes that you think about in situations and locations that they go to, like Indy starts out in the Alps,
Yeah.
and then he has then he gets the medallion, and then he has to go to the desert. And did they go to the desert after that? I always forget. That movie they go so many places. There's the submarine thing. They're on that island with the ark.
Yeah.
Faces get melted. Like it is an arc of story that is like, well, I'm trying to get the covenant, Ark of the Covenant, to get it where it needs to go. And there's a whole bunch of like that is not an adventure, that is an arc, a campaign arc. So like it's just the same thing. Like what is the situation? How grand is it?
Mhm.
And to go with you, how many parts do you need to get to it? How many pieces are
Mhm.
there, steps along the way to accomplish your goal? Your Demon King thing, like you could reskin that.
Well, I mean, I did in a way because so for instance, partway into the game, I asked the players after like the first major arc, I was like, "What is it you guys need like in this next arc?" And our friend Jason was like, "We need a Helm's Deep. Like we need a place where we can hold up
Mhm.
from the demons and be safe so that we can catch our breath."
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, so this is the thing I did, right? So what is Helm's Deep? Like, and I scrubbed it down to its bare essentials, right? So it's a protected fortress where players could retreat to that was kind of further away from everything else.
Mhm.
And then I looked, like I went through the campaign notes and I was like, okay, where could I put that? Like, oh, I could put it in the land of the undead. And I was like, well, how would it be invulnerable? And then I like built a whole plot arc about there was this invulnerable glyph over this holy city in the desert, and Bob's character is going to literally lift it off the ground and walk it out to the land of the undead and place it on this city and bring the city back to life. And like we had a whole campaign arc out of a request to, can we get a Helm's Deep?
And it was awesome.
Yeah,
It was epic.
You reskinned Helm's Deep.
Yep.
I did. I totally recycled it down to, I took it right down to basically to the studs, right? I took it right down to the studs. What is it you really want? Because you didn't want Helm's Deep, right? They didn't want like that particular structure. What they wanted was a protected fortification because they had spent a whole arc on the run.
Yeah, so that
And they
just,
were tired.
Yeah, that just goes back to your idea of like, what is the core essential idea about the thing that they're looking for?
Yep. And it made a big difference in the game because once they had that and had a stable base of operations, it changed a lot about the game because one, we could have reoccurring NPCs
Mm-hmm.
because once I had a place of I could have that could have stability.
Yeah.
We had NPCs turnover, plus they had a place where they could go out of and come back to.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing: if you want to reskin an adventure that you had that is closer to the story beats that you had, what you need to do is you have to have really strong pointers when you hit your story beats to point them at the next story beat.
Mhm.
And it won't ever work out exactly the same, so you'll have to adjust on the fly. It'll be a little bit more work for you as a game master because you can't freewheel it as much. But at least you'll have as long as you keep giving them really strong pointers and make it so that they feel like they still have some choice, then you can have a more point crawl
Mhm.
Or line crawl kind of experience.
Yeah.
The important thing there is just to make sure that when you're doing that the actions that they take have some pretty important effects on the next point that they go to, or at least the point after that. And that is generally how linear design is done in a satisfying way.
Yep, I agree. Hey, let's kick over and put on our game designer hat.
Sure.
And let's talk about recycling ideas, concepts, mechanics, whatever, for games, because I think in some ways we've all done this.
Well, I mean, we're going to go right to the mechanics thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So what about you, Bob?
I'm always looking at game mechanics that are like interesting in different ways. I've got a couple of game ideas that are using different ideas that I saw in other games. Like I have my brain in the way back. There's a file on record for a programmed movement game where you flip over cards that have programmed movement on that.
Mhm.
So you do whatever the card says as far as which way and how far you travel. And I stole that from Koi from Smirk and Dagger because it's programmed movement.
Yeah, and Koi isn't the first game to have programmed movement. There are a lot of different. What's the one? Something Express. Is it Cult Express or something?
I don't know.
Mo will know. There's another. I mean, there's plenty of program
movement games are not my favorite games.
Yeah. Senda's got a favorite program movement game, and I can't remember it. It's some interesting space flying game.
Cult Express is the one that
Cult Express,
yep.
yeah. Robo Rally, yep. Yeah, I think. I mean, from a design point of view, like I'm always looking at something like when I see a game and I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting thing it's doing, and Gravity Well. Yeah, thanks. Senda will remember. See. So I think that like I always catalog those things, right? So I always like look through games and I'm like, oh, that's really sharp how they're doing fear, right?
Yeah.
And then later, I'll give you for instance.
We've actually had the discussion about how to do this too, but continue.
So I've been noodling around with the police procedural game,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, okay, I want to do some stuff dealing with the emotions of trying to solve crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, let me lump in my favorite emotion systems. So masks, Blades in the Dark, and oh shit, I forget what my third one was. I had a third one. And I lumped them all together because, as you know, and I think as you coined it, which I absolutely love, is that I need to design by first building a giant block of granite.
Yep, and then chipping away.
And then chipping it into a sculpture.
Yep.
So I did. I took like all three of them and mashed them together, and then started sifting through and was like, well, this thing doesn't really fit. That thing doesn't fit. And like whittled it down to something where I was like, that's I think closer to what I'm.
Started chipping away.
Yeah. So and there's no. So we should be really clear about this. There's zero shame in recycling mechanics. Like there's a thing where I think new game designers are like, I have to be novel.
You don't.
Yeah.
Like novel is a thing you stumble onto.
You don't even have to put any one new thing into your mechanics.
You don't.
Yeah,
You
there's a fear or sometimes an
Stigma?
not arrogance,
Stigma's
but there's
probably
like
right.
I'm thinking of like kind of the opposite. Like I have to be innovative. Like I want. Like,
Yeah.
I need to be the guy
Yeah.
that makes the new thing, and it's like you can be innovative by recycling a mechanic and using it in different ways or wrapping different things around it.
You can,
So-
but I think innovation is sometimes overrated. Like
Yeah.
it's cool when it happens, but it's not like a thing that you can do constantly.
Well, that's it, right? So, like so for instance, I'm fairly confident, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm gonna guess that the person who invented Dominion did not start out going, I'm going to invent a card game that's never been invented before.
Probably not.
No, they were like, I want to make a card game about this thing. And then they started like messing around, and they were certainly inspired by something else because they've played other games.
Yeah.
And then they started to make subtle changes. And when they were done, they stopped and looked and went, oh, I don't think I've ever seen that before. And then their playtesters, buddies or whatever, were like, hey, me neither. Like, I don't think you, if your goal is to make innovation, yes, then I think it's a very frustrating thing.
Mhm.
I think you should just make the game you need to make and make the pieces you need and get them from wherever you can.
Yeah.
And I will say, I just credit shit all the time in the, like, if you look at the neighborhood mechanics in Hydra Hackers, they are completely inspired by Underground.
Mhm.
And says so right in the front of the book.
Yeah.
And the map thing, totally inspired by the Hood. Like, I'm with Chris. You do not have to be innovative. If you stumble onto innovation as you are working, great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But I don't think that's how people do it.
Yeah, if you dive in and your whole thing is I want to make a thing that nobody else has made before, you're gonna keep running into that. Like somebody will like, oh hey, that's kind of like X, and you're gonna like shit.
Simpsons did it.
Simpsons did it, yeah, and you're gonna be like frustrated as hell. Just make a game that you find, do something that you find interesting, and make the thing. And if it kind of harkens back to something else or reminds people of something, so be it. If it's fun and you enjoyed building it and people like to play it, bingo. I mean, there you go.
Now I will say, when people started seeing Hydra Hackers, they were like, oh my god, you must have read The Water Knife. And I honestly was like, nope. And then for like a while, I wouldn't read it. Because I was like, well, now I don't want to actually pick anything out of the book, because if my idea is so close to it,
You don't want to plagiarize it.
Well, there's no way I'm going to see something in that book that isn't going to drift into the game.
Yeah.
So to this date, I have not actually read The Water Knife. I want to, but I'll read it when I finish writing Hydra Hackers.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris, I think you bring up a really good point. Like it tied into a little bit of that tyranny of excellence from last week.
Mhm.
But you bring up a really good point. Like your goal can't be innovation. It's
You just make the game that you want to make.
just make the game you want to make.
I mean, you can strive for innovation. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. But if you
Right.
don't get there, like,
But if
then-
you're throwing out good rules to try to be novel,
yeah,
it's the game designer equivalent of the thing I say about game masters. The second you think you're being clever as a game master,
You're not.
you're gonna fuck something up. And it's the same thing. If you're sitting around
it's not,
and you're,
it's not always true. It's just about how you want to be clever.
I'm gonna say 2 out of 3 times, like the Naked Man. Like 2 out of 3 times when you're trying to be clever as a GM, you fuck it up,
Mine's a little higher than that.
like the Naked Man.
I mean, if that's true, man, I'm up for like a whole giant streak of bad.
You're just special, Chris.
Yeah, you're our outlier. But yeah, I think if your goal is innovation, like I think when you stumble on innovation, you'll know it because other people will tell you.
Uh-huh.
Because a lot of
People love the sequence rule.
right. Yeah. I mean, but that was literally like just one stupid question in the middle of your game.
Yeah.
Like that's like it's not how we started.
No, it was your idea.
Right, but it was like
It
you
wasn't
had
the
already
game
built
that I
the,
was intending.
you'd already built the game. I asked like one stupid question. You could have literally just been like, and just kept
No,
going.
it worked really well.
No.
Yeah.
But that's
It's
you
very,
never
very different.
you don't see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Deep.
What were we
Deep,
talking
man.
about? We were talking about designing
Well, we're talking about
games.
recycling and
Oh,
just don't be shy
the-
about it.
So, yeah, I wanted to say because they're like, did anybody mention a game that is basically just uses those rules and doesn't change anything? Because I can think of a really good one off the top of my head.
Go ahead.
Yeah, good.
Now I've forgotten the name. We've talked the mice game, the mice biking game, the biker.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Fate biker mice game.
Heavy Metal Thunder Mice?
Yeah, Metal Thunder Mouse is just Fate core.
Yeah.
There's nothing. The only thing there's nothing different
The
about
trappings of that game is
it. The
what makes that
trappings,
game.
yeah, exactly.
and that is also okay, right? Like sometimes your trappings wind up being unique.
Yeah. Now there are some people out there and products out there that are actually striving for that stuff. Like the Worlds of Fate was always striving to be innovative. Like they always want something new inside those books on purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But they were looking far and wide for that. It wasn't just an individual designer.
And what you picked didn't have to be radically out there.
It's true.
Like
Yeah.
you just had to drift a little outside of the norm, and then it was fine.
But like then you got things, and it was cool though. Like when
Well,
like
PK skillless Fate.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally innovative.
It's really fun. I actually like it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Now, but like we said, like there's no like you can strive for that, but I don't think you should base your designs around that.
No, I agree.
So yeah, recycle your stuff.
Yeah, don't be innovative for the sake of being innovative. Be innovative because you have reached a blank spot in your design, and you need to build your way across that chasm.
Now, if you want to recycle a mechanism or a procedure for a game that you're playing, like there's good and bad ways to do that.
I mean, we've talked about lifting.
We had a
mechanisms.
whole episode on it.
Yeah, we've talked about like the things to do. So you definitely need to scrub it.
Uh-huh.
And
You need to understand what it's actually doing.
and how many things can it collide into?
Uh-huh. And what it's going to do for your game.
Mhm.
And how to implement it so it actually functions inside of your setting, trappings, play,
Yes.
core loop of play.
You
Yeah.
should play test it, but you won't.
I mean, you'll play test it. You'll play test it with your group that you're playing.
You'll
with.
play
Yeah.
test it in the middle of your campaign.
Yeah.
You are the programmer that has put production. You've
I
put
don't
new
always test
code
my
in.
code in production. Yeah, I do.
But when I
I
yeah,
think I'm pretty sure that most game designers always test their code in a live setting.
no, I mean yes, but like when you're house ruling, and you're lifting something out of one game into another, you should totally run a session that doesn't actually tie into your campaign and test it out. But
I mean, you don't.
but you
have to.
don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
No, you don't have to. You
who's
can
got-
totally bork your fucking game.
Dude, man, who's got time for that?
That's right. You sound like every programmer that has jammed
Well, no.
who's
Look,
jammed untested code
look,
into a server.
I feel like you should do that for your job that you're getting paid for.
Yes.
I'm not going to do that for the things that I do for fun.
I'm with you, and I like we said in that episode, when you do that, you run the risk of blowing the shit out of
Yeah.
your game.
And all you have to do is be like, "Hey, everybody,
Let's
we're going
back
to try
that
this
shit
thing
out.
up, and if it doesn't work out, let's back it up."
Which I will also
Yeah,
say,
if everybody's on board with that, there's nothing wrong with it.
which I will also say, the other thing is that in terms of, to put a little IT on this, in terms of change management, one of the things that you are often required to have in change management is what's called a backout plan.
I feel like
Yep.
the world might end. Me and Ann just agreed on something.
Like sometimes you got to back that shit out and just
Yep.
be like, well, I put it in, it totally borked the game. Guess what? Erase that shit off your character sheets because we're not using it anymore.
Yep.
But I mean, I know players who are like, I've played in groups years ago where people would have had a fucking pissing fit over that. Like, no, I can't believe we're taking it out. Like,
Yeah.
you're nerfing the game.
Well,
Like,
that's why
yeah,
just-
I'm nerfing it
just do
because,
the thing that we talk about all the time: get consent up front.
Yeah.
well,
Look, we're gonna
yeah.
try this. We're gonna try this thing. and if it doesn't work-
Let's just say, in my past, I didn't have a consent-based approach to gaming.
Sure. Well, we're working in the modern age. where we
Yeah, in
have
the modern age, I
rules.
do. Yeah, in the modern age, I
Like
come at
these things
this-
are a lot easier to implement now
Yes, yes,
in
yes,
live
yes.
environments because we can make a live environment that is also a test environment at the same time.
I can make a live environment that is tolerant to change and reversal.
Correct.
Yes.
To use IT terms
Yes.
that I don't quite understand.
Yes, but no in IT terms.
Yeah. So to go back to the the topic at hand,
Yes.
If you distill the thing down to its core
Mhm.
and say like, oh, there's this mechanic and I really like it, I want to use it in my game. What is the essence of that mechanic that you really like? Like there's a mechanic in a game, there's a racing game, and I forget if it's NASCAR or if it's Daytona or something. It's a board game, and you have cards, and you have one card that goes with your car. Each car is a different color, and when you get your car, you get the one card that goes with that color car, which is like 9 spaces that you can move, and then all the other cards you get, there's kind of a drafting kind of a thing that you do to get your hand of cards. Now each card has some different number from 1 to 6 different colors on it for different cars. And when you play that card, starting from top and working your way down to the bottom, you move each of those cars that number of spaces. So when you
crashes and things,
well, it like drafts other cars and different stuff like that. So you'd be like, I want to move. If I play this card, I'm going to get to move 4 spaces, but the red car that's already ahead of me is also going to move 4 spaces, and they're still going to be ahead of me, and I don't want that, so I'm going to play this other card. So what you're doing on most turns is you're moving yourself and some number of other players as well.
Is it called downforce?
No.
Okay.
No, it's like Daytona racing or NASCAR racing or something. It's pretty generic in its title, but it's a board game. It's got a track, and you do the thing.
It sounds pretty fun.
So I really love the idea of when you move, you make a move, everybody else does at the same time. Like I thought that was really cool. Well, so I've been trying to bake that into a game that I come up with just because I like it.
Right, and that's the because that's that concept, right? So if you boil that thing down, right, it's essentially it's a mechanic where you get something, but you have to give stuff to other players.
Yep.
So you're mitigating you want to progress, but you have to mitigate how much you let other players progress. And so sometimes you have to make suboptimal decisions. You have to make suboptimal decisions for yourself because you have to also not over empower another player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Before we move on, which we should probably move on.
Yeah.
In the chat room, Blake Ryan said 1 GM did the retcon last session was all a dream. No example of Bobby from Dallas died, and then Kevin Lovecraft was like, I would flip the table unless that was an express mechanic in the game. In fact, I'm getting angry just thinking of that happening.
Can I in the after show, can I tell the time I did that?
Sure.
Because I was really clever, and guess what? It didn't fucking work.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to the conversation corner. I hope everybody enjoyed that. That's our conversation about recycling.
Yeah,
ideas.
That was fun.
Thank you, Blake Ryan.
I thought that was good.
I thought that was an enjoyable conversation.
Yeah. Right. Whether you guys did or not, no, it's fine. We hope you did.
God, I hope you all did. Please listen to us. It's a conversation corner. In fact, to keep things moving along, let's just do 1 or 2 each.
You get like one thing.
Yeah. Let's do like 2 each, and then we can move on.
Yeah.
Let's start with you, Phil.
I got to play some games this week.
What? You played games?
I did. I got to play. I played the Sprawl. I hadn't played for a while because we just had like a number of conflicting schedule things, and I was in that place where when you haven't played a game long enough, you're like, should we still be playing this game? But I was like, no, let's go finish out this mission. So by the time we finished the mission, I'm like, never mind. We're supposed to play this game. It's good. Yeah. It's fun. We finished our first mission, and we learned a lot of important things about weapons and armor. And I think we'll be making some better decisions in the future.
About weapons and armor?
Yeah, the game's kind of tough. Like, you really don't want to fuck up the damage roll on that game. The other one is we did our session 0 for Forbidden Lands, and we made characters.
How was that?
It's interesting. The character gen I thought was pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
The game, I'm still wrapping my head around the setting. Like, the GM book gives you like all the fucking history, like of everything in the setting.
It is a terrible place. Like, that's been like got the mist around it with monsters, doesn't it?
That's the end of the history. Like, there's like 1,500 years that come before that.
Are they relevant?
I think they are, because what they hint to in the book is that, like, as you play the game, you're going to discover things about the history of the land and things like that. Yeah. So I read it. I'm reading it. What I'm kind of getting into now is trying to figure out how to get the game started. Uh-huh. So I found an AP. I found an AP of it, so I'm going to go listen to see how they started it. I found it on YouTube, so I'm going to go give a couple of episodes a listen, because you basically just start on a hex somewhere and like start going. Like it's a hex crawl, so
Yeah.
it's like,
I mean, I love the fact that we have this modern technology that can let us just go listen to other people play these
yeah, I'm
games.
just gonna
We
go.
don't
I
have
am.
to
I'm
play
just
them.
gonna go listen to somebody else's game and just give it a feel and just be like, okay, what are you guys doing? What do I want to do it like that? That kind of thing. All right, those are my two things. Chris, you were laid up, man. Did you watch any TV while you were?
I did
your
watch
feet-
some serious amounts of TV. I also got to play a game. I'm talking about Planet because I got to play Planet again.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
So Planet is this game. You have a 12-sided magnetic shape in front of you that is about as big as your fist. Close your fist. That's how big it is. And you lay out these tiles that are magnetic that attach to this die, and they have 6 biomes on them. Maybe it's 5 biomes. I think it's 6. 6 biomes on them. They're 5 different biomes, and then you lay out these cards. And after the third turn, you start looking at these cards and trying to have these animals evolve on your planet before anybody else. And the idea is these cards either have you have to have the most individual water spots, the largest water spot next to a different biome like forest, or the largest desert not next to something like ice caps. And it's fun. It plays fast in about 30 minutes. There's 12 rounds, and you're drafting these things and passing around who the first player is. These 5 tokens every round, and I know it's a really great time, especially towards the end when you get to the last 3 turns, because there's not very many spots left on your D12, your dodecahedron, and you're constantly turning it around trying to figure out what's the best place to put this, because there's more cards now out, because it starts off slowly with there's only 1 animal that you can evolve on your planet, then there's 2 after turn 6, and then the last 3 turns there's 3. And any ties move that animal to the next one.
Oh, interesting.
So eventually it gets kind of competitive and interesting, and you're turning this thing around trying to do this spatial analysis in your mind of where to put your little biome.
I think it's
chip.
neat. I think it's neat because 3-dimensional computation is a factor harder. If this thing was just a board, there'd be some amount of the complexity of it goes down a degree.
The fact that it's on a dodecahedron is way better.
That's a very wicked.
That's actually a 20-sided, by the way.
Yeah,
Oh, what's 12?
I don't know.
the 12-ahedron.
Somebody hit me with a 12-sided die. What's a 12-sided die?
I want to I'm about to go foraging in my bag to get them.
Mo says there's 4 biomes: mountain, ice, forest, and desert.
And rock.
Mountain.
Ice, forest,
Wait.
desert.
I thought dodecahedron was 20.
Mountain.
Icosahedron is 20. All right, you got
This
me.
was right.
Well played.
Mountain, ice, forest, desert. I thought there's a 5th one, so there's 5 victory point cards.
Water.
Mountain, ice, forest, desert, water.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's
there's
5.
Water isn't really a biome.
Okay. I think we all
I
get
don't know.
I think we all
Whatever.
get the gist of
We
this.
get the gist of it, yeah.
That's what they call them in their instructions, man. Sorry. I mean, there's things that live in the water, right? Because it's not a biome. It's not a biome. I don't know.
Water,
I don't know.
water's a biome.
I thought so.
Ocean's a biome.
So that was my
Right.
one. The other one, I don't know which one to talk. I'll talk about the other ones in the after show.
Yeah.
I binged Good Omens. It's only 6 episodes.
Yes.
It's really enjoyable. I've never read the book, so, but David Tennant's fun. Michael Sheen I think it's Michael Sheen is the other actor that plays the primary role. It's if you like Neil Gaiman, he wrote it, the whole thing. He didn't just help write the book, but he actually was the lead writer on all the episodes too.
Oh, that's cool.
So, it's very Neil Gaiman. It feels like a Neil Gaiman, and yeah,
That's one of Senda's favorite books.
yeah, it's quite enjoyable. I had a great time. Well, Senda will probably hate it because she hates anything that is a book that is turned into a TV
I don't
show.
think so. She really liked the first couple episodes.
Oh, good. There you go.
That's saying a lot for how good it is compared to the books.
There you go.
I'll have to read the book. Maybe I'll pick it up. I just finished listening to a book on audiobook, so maybe I'll listen to that one. So that was my 2. Bob, what about you?
Yeah, so I was having difficulty last Friday, a lot of pain with my tooth, and feeling kind of after doing a bunch of yard work and riding a lawnmower on the pockmarked back 40 that I've got, bouncing up and down and twisting and everything. So I just kind of kicked back in a chair, and I needed something to just watch and relax and enjoy. So I watched Captain Marvel again, and then I followed that up with the Disney Three Musketeers, which never gets old.
Yeah, I love Disney Three Musketeers.
Tim Curry chewing the scenery as Richelieu is just glorious.
Yeah,
so
it's the best part of that.
All
I
for
love
one
watching that.
and more for me.
Good stuff.
He's
So,
one of my favorite He's like one of my favorite charming bad guys.
Oh, yeah.
Like I love.
Well, that's one Bob. Which other one? But he's also my favorite. He's a really wonderful bad guy.
I thought that counted as two.
What
But-
did you say?
Maybe
said you watched
that's
Captain
only
Marvel?
one.
Oh, you said Captain
Yeah,
Marvel.
Captain
Sorry.
Marvel. Yeah.
Cool. Let's move on. I guess we're gonna do Patreon shoutouts now. Hope y'all enjoyed the show. Let's do some
Yeah.
Patreon shoutouts.
Yeah.
Craig, the Lord of One Name. Eileen Barnes, the Duchess of Pandas Talking Games. New patron, Jim Likes Games.
Yay! We like Jim likes games. We like Jim
Yeah, we like Jim.
a lot.
He's our royal merchant. Feels about right? Royal merchant.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Like Jim's table is like
Hence why the royal merchant.
Jim's table is like every Christmas catalog I've ever wanted in my life.
I know, right?
Oh,
Andrew Dacey, the Warden of Whiskeys. Eric Bonts, the Duke of Gators and the Lord of Beefness, the only person with 2 titles. Todd
because he
Craft-
asked.
Yeah, it's true. Todd Crapper, the prophet of probability. Schmitty, the keeper of the labyrinth. Kevin Lovecraft, our royal beard. P.K. Sullivan, the Queen's royal rocketeer. It was really weird when Kevin didn't have a beard, and we are still calling him the royal beard.
Yeah. That was. I'm kind of glad Kevin grew that back.
Yeah, me too.
That was.
It was unsettling.
You ever see like when they shave a bear, right? Like
Oh my god, the shaved bear is frightening as fuck.
I don't know if it was that bad.
No, I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm just. It was off. It was off. I didn't even recognize him.
What's on? John C. LeMay, the guard at the end of the world. John Carney, the court necromancer. By the way, is necromancy evil? We can talk about that later. Christopher Gray, the spy master of MMP. Mike Dinos, the inquisitor of Mark. Jesse Edmund, the royal doctor. Donnie Harville, the lord of the slack room. Brian Kurtz, the royal doctor of physics. Andy Olson, the duke of dice. Merrick Blackman, the royal D&D reviewer. By the way, Andy Olson asked me to swipe my sources when I said Piazzo instead of Paizo. Like, where do you get off calling it Piazzo? I don't know. Is there a proper pronunciation for that?
I'm
Is
sure
it
there
Paizo?
is.
Our friend Brian pronounces it paisao.
Paisao?
Well, that's just wrong.
That's
That's
weird.
just wrong.
That one's wrong. Like
I mean, it's a made-up word anyway, right?
Yeah.
Is
I mean,
does
it seems
Piazzo
pretty clear.
mean anything?
P-A-I-Z-O. Paizo.
I
That
don't-
seems pretty clear.
I mean, sure. I always call it Piazzo for some reason.
You throw another syllable in there that doesn't belong.
Pi.
I'm gonna try-
Paizo.
I'm gonna
If you
try- I'm
said-
gonna
If you
try-
said paizo, then I'd be like, okay.
Piazo.
No, it's P-A-I.
Oh.
That's why you're getting it wrong.
So it's Paizo.
Yeah.
I'm wrong. That's fine.
Oh, phonetics.
Oh, phonetics.
Oh, spelling.
Merrick Blackman, the royal D&D reviewer. Rob Eberzado, the Gauntlet of the Queen. And you are, Bob?
I'm the Fist of the Queen.
So weird.
Nothing wrong with that.
GM Gerrymander. Well, it's fine. It's consensual. GM Gerrymander, the Lord of the After Show, and Toby Sennett, the Baron of Britannia.
You're killing me here. There's a section here that says chat room for life. Aren't we checking in with the chat room for life before
No.
we go into the?
No.
Then
We
we
should
need to-
remove it.
Thank you.
Well, then that's why we keep blowing the ending.
You should
Thanks,
remo-
everybody.
You should remove it.
Thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
Oh God! If you're free Tuesday, you know what? I'm not even sure I can make this recommendation, but I'll do it anyway. If you're
Really?
free,
You can't make the recommendation?
I don't
Are
know
you not
this
having
week.
fun tonight?
I did have fun tonight. If you're free Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, or next week, 8 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. the Queen's time. Come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
That was subtle. That was real subtle. Just want to throw that out there. That was subtle. By the way,
Subtle.
He did the slash thing again with the italics.
Subtle.
The italics hand gesture, which you have to check us out on Twitch if you want to see what the italics gesture is.
Uh-huh.
If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. Also, take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bone, Stone, and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, The Gnomecast, the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars, Zhang Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, The Tabletop Bellhop, your cardboard concierge, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming MBS.
After you have filed off all those nasty trappings from that thing you picked up in the convention, you can reach us directly.
What happened? That was okay, I suppose.
You can reach us directly via email at mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Check out our Facebook group. Hit us up on Twitter. The show and the network is at misdirectedmark. He's at Robert M. Everson. I'm at DNA Phil, and that guy is the Light 101.
Oh, yeah.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaign.
Misdirected Mark, word scramble.
Thank you. That's three
Number
in
3.
one night.
That's number 3.
MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhangyu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhangyu Hustle. And last but certainly not least, Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
Hey, buddy, I got a question for you. That police procedural game, do you have like notes written down somewhere in like a doc or anything like that? Or is it all just
Not yet. I haven't translated it from the notebook I have. I have a fuck ton of notes. I was at that conference.
Mhm.
I have a fuck ton of notes.
What about your Long Live the Queen stuff? Is it any kind of like digital format?
Yeah.
Do you think maybe might want to slip that to the patrons so they can take a look at it just for fun?
Let me see what shape it's in.
Okay.
Let me see.
It'd be nice to.
Well, I actually have gathered a group of patrons, which I've been busy getting ready for Origins, but I have a actual group of Slack patrons who have expressed an interest in the police procedural, and I have a private Slack channel open with them so that I can converse with them. I just honestly have not had a free minute with all the Origins prep to get to them, but when we come back from Origins, I actually have 1 or 2 things to do. When those things are done, then I'm going to start feeding them some stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a Misdirected Mark production, which is the media arm of Encoded Designs. Keep it green, everybody. Keep it super green. Mic drop.
We out. Do 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 do. Welcome to the after show.
The after show.
The after show.
All right. Well, that was a fun ride.
That was fine.
Yeah, no,
That was
fine.
comedic gold.
It's all good. We're all fine here. How are you?
With positive information on the inside.
People are worried about if you pick something up at the con. So just, always use card sleeves.
Yep, always use card sleeves.
Always use card sleeves.
Yeah, always use card sleeves. You won't pick up anything at the con.
You could also get like book bags to put your books in.
Yes.
I mean that'll contain them.
Yeah. Just
wear gloves.
In the old days, they made these things. Chessex used to make these things called dragon skins, which were basically book covers for your games.
Yeah. I
had a shit ton of them for a long time.
You wanted to tell a story.
There were a couple. I was gonna tell the time about being clever.
Yes, tell the time about being clever.
Right. So in my corporation game, the players were complaining to me that they were too poor, that they couldn't buy all the really cool equipment in the game. Because corporation gives no end to the amount of cool gear.
I feel like a bunch of people have heard the story, but you should tell it anyway.
Okay, I'll tell it really quick. So anyway, they were like, we want more cool gear, we want to do more cool stuff. So I was like, okay, like let me be clever about it. So I went and decided to be clever about it, and I wrote a story where in the episode before, they kidnapped this guy who is who was a criminal who was an expert in cloning, and then they delivered him to the corporation, didn't think anything about it, and then they went on a mission where I gave them like almost everything in the book. I let them have like almost anything they wanted, and they put on like the most badass gear, and they were supposed to go to this rival corporation's factory and sabotage it, and they murder their way through this corporation like in the most, like it was the ultimate rogues phase. Like, just show me how you kill these 20 guards with your minigun, right? Like they mowed through it. They upload the code to the nanite cluster that's like creating the factory, and it reprograms the nanites to disassemble everything. And so this cloud just goes out, and I have the players start making rolls, and as soon as one fails, I'm like, you're disassembled. And I kill every one of them. The last one of them makes it out of the building and is like out in the middle of the desert.
Thinks he's going to get exfiltrated.
He's waiting for the drop ship that never shows up. And he's like, he just dies in the middle of this like Argentinian desert as it like just washes over him. And then I'm like, okay, let's all take a break. And I went and took a leak with a big smirk on my face. And I came downstairs and I'm like, okay, you wake up in this room. I'm like, and they tell you like they cloned you and sent your clones out on this suicide mission. And man, if they could have come across that table and murdered me, they'd have fucking killed me.
At least one of us looked at you and said, fuck you, Phil.
I don't know why.
Because they thought we were getting some cool gear.
So what?
I gave them what they wanted. I let them play with all the
You
toys,
got
and then I
cool gear.
took them all away.
I guess I don't understand why you're all angry about that.
because I took it
we
all
wanted
away.
to keep the shit.
Yeah, they wanted to like just play on power level 10.
Okay.
But I let them play on power level 10, then I took it all away.
I feel like that's just like a reason to not play the game.
Well, I
If you think you're clever, you're not.
I was so proud of myself, and then like afterwards I was like, wow, that did not go the way I thought it was. Like I thought they would be so pleased to have gotten to play that adventure.
I think they might have overreacted a little.
Yeah.
I'm sure we did a little.
I mean, they didn't consent to being clones.
Nope, there was no consent. And it was me again, because had I said that to them, so now let's back up and do it correctly. If I had said to them, like, listen, my concern is if I let you have access to all the big guns, there's no way to put that genie back in the bottle, right? There's no way to play this game back on medium mode if I give you all the hard level gear. So why don't we do a one shot where I'll let you like trick the fuck out and blow everything up, but it'll just be a one shot. And if they had all said yes, we could have played that adventure with a foundation of consent, and then I think everybody would have had a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they would have all liked dying. Because if they knew it was a one shot and caught on, like, oh, apparently we're not getting out of here.
Oh, I would have gone out in a blaze of glory,
yeah,
baby.
see?
Yeah.
Yeah. But again,
Yeah.
I tricked them. I didn't get consent
Well,
up front, and I fucked it all up.
That's the thing. Like, it's the tricking.
Yeah.
Well, that's the part where you think you're clever, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'm going to fool them.
Well, no, you could. Well, that's where you think you're clever. for
That's
fooling
when,
them.
yes.
Instead of being clever for like, oh, this is a cool thing where I can give them what they
Yes,
want.
when
and
you
get what I
think
want.
you're
I'm
being
fooling
clever.
you and you don't like it.
Yeah. There is a proper way to have done that mission, and they would have enjoyed it. We would have all had a fun time, and then I had to do some cleanup after that. Like after that session, I had to do some cleanup. I also had to give them some free upgrades to their ship because they were so pissed at me. I had to buy them off.
It's interesting. It's
Yeah,
just-
Angie's like, I think you could have also gotten around it by feeding them hints that it was clones or something not normal. And no, that wouldn't have worked. we hated it.
I would have thought.
We were pissed.
I would have thought, based on your
Man.
corporation, the fact that the amount of gear they gave you was suspicious enough.
They're not wrong. If you would have laid out a bunch of clues that they weren't themselves, and then it's just like, well, they just didn't figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a possibility, but the problem is it relies on the players getting clues,
It's true.
and that's a risky. So yes, if it works, it definitely will help. If they don't pick up on the clues or interpret them the wrong way, it doesn't help.
I guess. I don't know.
I'm telling you, I could have done that in a consent forward model,
Sure.
and everybody would have bought it.
But there's like, even without that, with that situation being the mystery part of it, like you could have created a really kind of cool, like questioning themselves mystery, like what is going on here.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. They got so wrapped up in blowing shit up, they weren't looking for anything. And
Yeah.
they had so much gear that they were solving problems like with a hammer. Every problem.
Uh-huh.
And make no mistake, I know the players that were at that table. I know where our heads were in those days, back in the day, the kind of people we were and how we acted and
That's my
different
point.
stuff. Like the headspace that we were in.
That's my point of that. You all
Yeah.
probably overreacted a little.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
And
But it is one of those things, like, the lesson is, yes, there are some things I could have done. So yes, in game, I definitely could have done some stuff to try to poke holes in it. But here's my fear. So what if in the middle of the game, they realize they're clones, right? And they realize this might be a suicide mission.
Uh-huh.
Then they leave
sure,
with their shit. And now I have another problem.
Oh no,
I have those characters stuck with all that gear.
You know what I do at that point?
Yeah, you send the other characters to come kill them. I still have another problem.
No.
No.
I take their the whole point of the clones is that you sent their consciousness out there. You just stuck their consciousness back in, and now there are these clones out there that are badass NPCs that you have at your disposal.
Yeah, if I can pry them. Well, would they have been less pissed when I took their living characters away?
No.
No, they still would have been pissed.
Well, now they have the chance to go get all that gear by going and killing their clones.
No, that was my whole purpose.
He
Like,
doesn't want it.
dude, if I had let them have any of that gear, I'd have never gotten that game back in the bottle. Like
Nope.
we could have never had a normal mission ever again.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have just. So this was before you were doing the better kind of improvisational stuff, because then the game just pivots to being like, well, there's these 4 or 5 characters out there that are just turning into warlords,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was
starting their own corporation.
yeah, it was. I mean, there's definitely things I could have done better.
It's like that last character that got to the surface.
Yep.
Like letting him escape and then sucking his mind back and then be like, well, what the hell's left inside of the thing?
Well, and
A
see,
psychotic.
the thing is, it wasn't even sucking their minds back because the technology in the game is like it was just like because it was recycled. It was stacks, so they were forks.
Oh, so they were.
It wasn't like their consciousness wasn't in their bodies back in the clothes. They were forks, just like in
Altered Carbon.
Thank you.
Yes.
So they were in two bodies at the same time?
They were different people.
They were different people.
Well, they were forked, right?
Yeah.
So they were the same mind, but the second the forks started going out on their own, they're just different people.
Yeah, so like instead of saying that they wake up, you could have always been like, well, you're back on the base, you're like watching this all happen.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All of these suggestions, like the ones that Ange is making in the chat room and stuff like that, these are all great for an enlightened group of players in the modern era.
Hence,
back in the day,
why
nope.
I don't know necessarily that you were problematic completely.
It wasn't problematic. There's definitely I definitely didn't have to like I did the bait and switch because I thought it would be awesome. Right? I did it because I thought when I revealed it, they would be like, bravo, Phil. Yeah. You had us all along.
Your intentions
masterful GM.
Your intentions were problematic.
Yeah, my intentions were bad.
But like if your intentions were like, okay, I'm gonna drop a bunch of clues and let them try to figure this out and then see what they do.
But this is this harkens back to that guy from the UK Game Expo, right? He's like, I'm going to shock and awe the players by gang raping their children.
But that is
that's awful, right? Like that's just fucking awful.
That is beyond a line.
Yeah. Well, it is beyond a line, right? Like there's 15 things wrong with it, and one of them was don't fucking try to get the shock value.
Yeah,
giving your players what they asked for, but knowing that it'll destroy your game is a completely different thing.
Right. And if I had been further along as a GM, I could have actually just expressed that. Like I could have said, guys, if I give you this stuff, we're gonna break the game.
Yeah, I will.
How do we want to get around this?
Yeah, you could have been like, I'm gonna give you this stuff, but it's probably not going to stay with you.
Yeah, like you have to give it back.
Yeah, or like it's on loan to you,
right,
from the corporation.
Right. But I was a little drunk on my own power at that point, and a little drunk on my own skill that I was like, I can pull this off. Like I will pull this off, and they will applaud my brilliance.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
All right,
narrator voice.
What else do we want to talk about?
I want to talk a little bit. We don't have to talk about a ton, but so Pride, right? This is 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So I came out on the show. You came out. We came out together.
Yeah.
On the show.
It's going to be more successful.
Which is interesting. Let me ask you a question. Like, let's just go back and forth. It's been a year since on the show you came out as poly.
Yes.
How has a year of being poly been?
Very good.
Yeah.
I don't really want to talk more about it. I'm not really interested in talking about my personal life. Totally
fair. Calendars?
I mean, I do. So if you're in the Slack room, there was a thing that Schmitty posted that's pretty accurate.
Yes. That graphic Schmitty posted about poly is spot on. Okay. No, that's fair. That's fair. We don't have to talk about personal stuff. Yeah. So
I mean, you can. I just don't want to.
No, it's fine. I'm just.
And if you remember last year, once I said anything about it, I got lambasted by a few people. So
did you?
Yeah, I did. So I'm good.
Okay. Fair enough. That's fine. I mean, I know a whole bunch more because we're friends off mics. So anyway, yeah. So like a year of being out as queer has been fun. It has been it's been a mix. It's been a mix of both refreshing in that things that I would awkwardly say as jokes because I was basically trying to fly flags. Now I just come out and say. Which is very, which is fun. Like I fun. It's comfortable, right? It's comfortable to be yourself. But at the same time, I think there's, I still struggled a lot this year with the, really with the idea, like there were a couple things. So I basically came out in my mid 40s. So I essentially skipped, like all the things that young queer people do, right? Like, so I didn't watch like a lot of the cornerstone movies. And like I didn't, first time I saw Pride Parade was when we saw it at Origins a couple of years ago. And like I didn't do all those things, right? I didn't read any of the book, like any of the key books, media, like any of that stuff. So I did for part of the year go through a piece where like I didn't feel queer enough, and wound up having a lot of talks about it with my therapist, who kind of told me that like, yeah, you didn't have to go through those things, right? You didn't have to have like you didn't have a terrible coming out with your parents. You didn't have to worry about it at the workplace.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're any less queer.
Exactly. And then she's like, but you went like 20 years not actually being yourself, and that has its own like pain associated with it. So like that was like a really that was a really good discussion to have. And the other piece that I still kind of wrestle with now is that because I have had through my life female partners, there's also this thing where, you know, do I even look queer enough, right? Like, because on the surface, because on the surface I can easily pass like as a hetero couple,
sure,
right? But so there's like an erasure thing where
I mean, it's mostly. I feel like some of that's mostly just you in your head, right?
Yeah, well, it's mostly all in my head.
Yeah,
right. Like it's pretty much all in my head, but it is a struggle because, you know, when you don't, because then if you start to doubt yourself, like, or doubt your identity, right, like that has impacts on your overall health and happiness.
It's true.
So, you know, I spent some time this year struggling with both of those things, right? Struggling with, am I queer enough? The answer today is yes, I am. It's fine. And sometimes just kind of being erased because, you know, I look hetero. I mean, the truth is when you come out late in your life, like I came out middle age, I already had a look. Like I don't have, like, I have my haircut.
What does queer look like?
I mean, there are certain types of looks and clothes that people in the queer community adopt.
Sure.
Right. But like having come out later, like I leapfrogged all that. Right. I'm basically a guy who likes black polos and jeans.
Yeah. I just
like that's.
I I get that there's like a certain fashion, but I don't really think that is the thing that makes somebody queer.
It isn't.
In fact, I
You're
don't
not
think that's
required
at
to
all.
wear a uniform.
You're not.
So
you're not. But when you're trying to connect to a group, right? When you're trying to fit in with a group,
which matters a lot to you.
Well, and it does, because I mean, again, having spent 20 years in the closet, I didn't have any, like, I didn't have queer friends that I got to talk about.
Yeah, but you do now.
Being queer with. Yeah, well, I do now, but
like some of your friends that I know that are queer, I would never have guessed that, but I also don't know what that looks like.
Right. So
some of our friends, not your friends, our friends.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, there are some struggles with the feeling of fitting in.
Absolutely.
Like, do I fit into this?
You are more than
so. For instance,
entitled to those feels.
I went to a panel at Metatopia on queer content in games, and when I tell you that there is a look for the queer community, if you had looked around that room, it's like that Sesame Street thing, right? Like one of these kids is doing his own thing. Like I'm sitting in there in a black polo, jeans, and like there's like, you know, a dozen people with buzz, you know, like the one-sided buzz cut, like the Darcy Ross buzz cut hair, like, you know, but like, and tank tops and what, like there's a look. And for a moment sitting in that room, I was like, do I even belong here?
There are a number of people, though, that I think would slide into the same category that you are, that look a lot like you.
Yes, but it's just a kind of thing, right? Like there's a moment where you're sitting in a room and you're like, are they wondering why I'm here?
Sure. Then they should just ask you. Although they could just be welcoming, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you have a card. It's not like you're like, well, I have my queer license. Like, I'm certified through 2020.
Then again, I tend to notice that most people are often too self-centered to think that, and also most people are generally either, and the people that are thinking that anyway aren't necessarily decent human beings anyway, unless they're feeling.
Oh, see, Mo thinks I fit the bear stereotype. That's sweet. I mean, that's kind of where I'm going. But yeah, no, I mean, those were the challenges of this year. Like the challenges of this year, and still going on, right? Is like, where do I fit into a queer community?
Where do you want to?
Yeah, well, and who are, like, you know, who is my queer community? Like, I think I have some inklings of, you know, like a little bit of it, but like, I don't know. I would kind of like to do, like, the Gauntlet did this, and I kind of would like to do it in the Misdirected Mark one. Like, I might just make a private Slack channel. Not one you can find in the master list for queer content, and people could just PM me if they want to join in, and I'll add them. And then that way, the only people who will, in case people weren't completely out or whatever, the people in it will just only know the people who are in it. I might do something like that. I'll talk to Rob about it. So, I don't know. Like, I love our community. So, I mean, if there are other queer folk in our community who want to just, talk, like, we can have that space.
Mhm.
So, and we can make it as private as we want. So, anyway, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It wasn't a terrible year. It was a great year. But I mean, it wasn't like, hey, I came out last year and it's been nothing but sunshine and fucking flowers, right? Like,
Yeah.
I came out last year and it was some sunshine, some flowers, and, a whole bunch of therapy along the way.
Mhm.
And, it's ongoing.
Yeah.
I'm not upset with it at all. Like, compared to the 20 plus years of not being out, it's great. But yeah, like I'm still finding my way. Still finding out where I like who my people are and how to fit in, that kind of thing. Anyway. All right, anyway, that was my piece.
I gotta go to work.
Yeah, we should cut
Are you gonna-
this
are
so
you
that
gonna be
Chris
okay to go
can.
to work?
I have to go to work. I have a choice.
Oh man, do you have like a back brace or something?
Not right now. Try to go in tomorrow.
Okay.
I guess in short, the being ethically poly has been very positive for my mental health. I am much better than I was last year or 2 years ago. That's about all I can say about that.
I got a big smile on my face.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because I know the rest of the story.
Yes, you do know the rest of the story.
So yeah.
One book I can recommend to anybody who's interested in polyamory or the idea of relationships that are beyond that stuff is called The Ethical Slut. Go read it. It's really good. It'll teach you a lot about what I'm talking about. And that's all.
Yeah, awesome.
All right.
Cool.
Cool.
You all have a pleasant evening.
Hey, have a good one, everyone. Secret guest next week.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Mhm.
kids.
Bye.
Oh,
Good night. Thanks for coming out. We love you all.
Bye-bye.